Chapter 21-25. With a wave of his sleeve, the starlight that blotted out the sky swept over. The next moment, several demon generals, blood god sons, and more than 200 demon race experts were all drowned in the dazzling starlight. The night sky was dazzling and dazzling. It was like a bright moon had fallen to the earth, illuminating thousands of miles around. The silver starlight flashed and quickly dissipated. The night sky returned to darkness, but the demon generals, blood god sons, and demon race experts had all disappeared. No one knew where they had gone or whether they were alive or dead. Only the stronger demons noticed that the night sky was filled with black ash that dissipated with the wind. Without a doubt, those demon generals, blood god sons, and elite experts had all been turned to dust. Xianxia had only casually waved his sleeve and killed hundreds of experts and experts. Such powerful strength and miraculous means made everyone present dumbfounded. Song Yu's expression changed dramatically, and his eyes were filled with shock and fear. Previously, he still had a glimmer of hope in his heart, but now, even his last hope of victory had been extinguished. He had to accept reality. Not only was he no match for Xianxia, but even with the addition of 1,000,000 demon race soldiers, it was impossible for them to kill Xianxia. This person was already invincible, like a god. Thinking of this, Song Yu shouted hoarsely and murderously, "Everyone listen to my order. Kill Xianxia at all costs. Warriors of my race, even if we bleed to the last drop of blood, we can't let him leave alive." Song Yu's voice was sonorous and forceful, full of iron and blood. Countless demon race soldiers, whose morale had been completely depleted, were stimulated at this moment. They all let out deafening roars and battle cries as they charged toward Xianxia in the night sky. Kill. Be loyal to the ancestor until death. Everyone, let's go together. Even if we are smashed to pieces, let his blood run dry and his soul wither. No one is allowed to take a step back. Even if we die, we can't disgrace our race. At least 100,000 demon race soldiers surged out of Fish Dragon Mountain. Like a pitch-black tide, they swept toward Xianxia. After Song Yu gave the order, he quietly concealed himself and flew north without a sound. Half a month ago, Northern Underworld Mountain had sent news. The ancestor demon god had learned of the situation in the north and intended for the demon race army to retreat to Northern Underworld Mountain. Back then, Song Yu had not received the exact order, so he could not withdraw his troops on his own. He could only hide in Fish Dragon Mountain to heal his wounds. But now, he could no longer care so much. He would rather sacrifice the 1,000,000-strong army of the Fish Dragon Mountain to stall Xianxia and create a chance for him to escape. However, Song Yu underestimated Xianxia in the end. Song Yu of the demon race's demon race. As such, when the 100,000 devilish soldiers charged toward him, he made a hand seal with both hands and let loose a low cry with a cold expression. As his voice fell, the night sky that was as dark as ink suddenly became deathly still, as if a mirror had been frozen. The space within a radius of 1,000 kilometers seemed to have been sealed in ice. The movements of the 100,000 demon race soldiers became extremely slow, like they had been slowed down 100 times. Thousands of cracks appeared in the pitch-black night sky. Dazzling starlight shone from within. Swish, 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 swish. In the next moment, over 9,000 huge swords condensed from starlight pierced through the cracks and rained down on the demon race army. This was one of Kenshin's ultimate sword techniques, sword rain. The starlight swords formed from the power of stars in outer space gathered like rain. Such a wondrous technique was the true ultimate technique of Kenshin. As the sword rain rained down, the 100,000 demon race soldiers were immediately enveloped by sword shadows. Body after body was sliced apart by the sword light. They were minced into pieces of flesh and blood that rained down. Screams and howls of rage erupted in the night sky, converging into a terrifying torrent of sound waves that reverberated endlessly. Xianxia was nowhere to be seen. He did not need to look to know that the fate of the 100,000 demon race soldiers was certain death. He took 5 steps as if he was taking a leisurely stroll, and he flew 150 kilometers away as if he had teleported, catching up to Sangyu. Sangyu suddenly sensed danger approaching. His back was icy cold, and the aura of death emerged from the depths of his soul. For the first time in his life, he felt that he was so close to death. Without hesitation, he used a teleportation secret technique. He wanted to teleport 800 kilometers away from Mount Fish Dragon. With a flash of black light, his 1,000-foot-tall demon wolf body became illusory and blurry. He was about to vanish from the spot. He was about to escape from Ji Tianxing's eyes. However, a horrifying scene appeared. Just as Sangyu was about to teleport away, Ji Tianxing suddenly reached out with his right hand and grabbed at him. Bam! A huge dark golden dragon claw instantly grabbed Sangyu and held him firmly. He was about to enter the alternate space when the dark golden dragon claw violently pulled him out. Sangyu was instantly horrified. His 3 eyes opened wide while unparalleled terror surged out from the bottom of his heart. Damn it! What secret technique is this? How can it forcefully interrupt my teleportation? Ji Tianxing, this bastard. Where did he come from? He is definitely not a newly advanced martial sage. Sangyu did not believe that Ji Tianxing had just broken through to the martial sage realm. Such a tyrannical and mysterious technique was definitely not something an ordinary martial sage could perform. Just as this thought flashed through Sangyu's mind, he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his body as if it was being torn apart. He then realized that the dark golden dragon claw had suddenly tightened and was ruthlessly crushing him. The 1,000-foot-long body of the demonic wolf was extremely fragile in front of the dark golden dragon claw. Immediately, a cracking sound could be heard as dense cracks appeared on the wolf's body. The heart-wrenching pain caused Sangyu to cry out in pain as he struggled with all his might. "Ah, Ji Tianxing, you bastard! I will tear you apart!" Sangyu recklessly exploded with power. His body suddenly shrunk by 10 times before it violently expanded. Bam! There was a muffled sound as the dark golden dragon claw was blown to pieces and turned into numerous golden light fragments that dissipated. Sangyu had finally escaped from Ji Tianxing's grasp. However, his body was covered in blood and he looked extremely miserable. His wings and legs had been crushed and they drooped weakly on his body. Broken demon bones could be seen in his wounds. His body was covered in cracks and wounds and he looked like a broken porcelain bowl. Dark purple demon blood gushed out like a fountain and dyed his body dark purple. Sangyu retreated 20 miles away and glared at Ji Tianxing with hatred. He shouted in a hoarse voice, "Ji Tianxing, stop! I want to negotiate with you." Chapter 21-26. Seeing Ji Tianxing's decisive refusal, Sangyu's heart burned with worry. He said anxiously, "Ji Tianxing, I admit that you are very strong. But you are alone. How can you protect all the people of the Luoshui Divine Kingdom? Even if you can kill me, there are still more than 3 million soldiers outside the Fish Dragon Mountain and Skywolf Pass. Once I die, they will attack the Luoshui Divine Kingdom without a care. They will slaughter at least a few million people. Moreover, countless blood sovereigns and elite experts will sneak into the Luoshui Divine Kingdom and massacre the city. Even if I die, millions of people will die with me." Sangyu spoke very quickly, and his tone was also very firm, revealing an unquestionable tone. "However, if you can spare my life and stop the war, I will immediately order the army to retreat. All the demons on the northern battlefront will retreat to North Underworld Mountain as quickly as possible. Isn't this the result that the Luoshui Divine Kingdom wants? Moreover, the millions of people of the Luoshui Divine Kingdom won't have to die. Ji Tianxing, this deal is beneficial to you. I hope you can seize the opportunity." After speaking his thoughts, Sangyu reminded Ji Tianxing in a serious tone, afraid that he would not consider it seriously. Ji Tianxing glanced at him with a disdainful sneer on his cold face. He said indifferently, "At first glance, what you said seems to make sense." Sangyu was overjoyed and asked expectantly, "So, you agree?" Ji Tianxing shook his head and said coldly, "I refuse. What I want is not only the retreat of the demon army and the resolution of the Luoshui Divine Kingdom's crisis. I want all the demons who invade the Luoshui Divine Kingdom to die here and be unable to return to North Underworld Mountain. All the demons, including you, must die. Ji Tianxing's tone was equally domineering and full of confidence. Song Yu's body stiffened, and his 3 eyes widened with grief and indignation. Ji Tianxing, you are too arrogant. Do you really think you are a god? You're so overbearing. One day, you'll fall in the hands of my devil race and suffer the pain of being hacked into pieces. Ji Tianxing looked at him coldly and said in a calm voice, you won't be able to see whether I will fall into the hands of the demon race. After all, you're going to die soon. Moreover, you're going to be smashed into pieces and die without a complete corpse. After he finished speaking, he did not waste any more words with Song Yu. His right hand pointed at the sky as he shouted expressionlessly, hidden swords in the void, myriad swords return to origin. As his voice fell, tens of thousands of starlight spots suddenly lit up high in the night sky. Each of the light spots was a giant sword of starlight that was hundreds of meters long. They fell like shooting stars. Swish! Swish! Tens of thousands of stellar swords stabbed down at the same time, firmly locking onto Song Yu's aura, making it impossible for him to dodge. Instantly, the night sky within a radius of several thousand miles was illuminated by the silver starlight. Song Yu was under great pressure. His body trembled and the wounds all over his body ruptured at an accelerated rate. However, he did his best to hold on and roared in grief and indignation, Ji Tianxing, even if I die, I won't let you have it easy. As he roared, he suddenly opened the 3rd eye on his chest, releasing an endless amount of black light. The extremely pure black light condensed into a pillar of light that was hundreds of meters long. It carried a mysterious and cold power as it blasted towards Ji Tianxing. Song Yu had used this secret art before. Ji Tianxing also knew that the black pillar of light was the power of annihilation. However, he was fearless. His expression and eyes did not show any signs of retreating or worry. He raised his hand and punched without hesitation. Star-shattering fist. A golden fist the size of a mountain slammed towards the pillar of annihilation with destructive power. Boom! The two collided with a deafening sound that shook the world for thousands of miles. Ripples appeared in the night sky. The ground trembled violently and fissures appeared. A violent shockwave spread out in all directions along with countless fragments of golden light. The golden fist was shattered, but the pillar of annihilation was also completely destroyed. Song Yu's ultimate trump card had been neutralized by Ji Tianxing just like that. He was filled with despair and turned to flee. However, tens of thousands of starlight swords had already arrived. Bam 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 bam. In an instant, hundreds of starlight swords stabbed into his body, creating a series of loud booms. The 3,000-meter-long demon wolf's body was instantly riddled with holes. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere. The previously ferocious and terrifying demonic wolf's body was immediately reduced to a bloody mess. Song Yu screamed in pain and desperately swung his claws to shatter the starlight swords. He also used all his strength to release demonic power and condense a black shield to protect himself. Unfortunately, under the bombardment of tens of thousands of swords, the black shield quickly dissipated. In less than 10 breaths, Song Yu's demon wolf body was shattered by the tens of thousands of starlight swords and scattered into the night sky. At the same time, thousands of starlight swords shattered and turned into starlight that scattered into the night sky. Whoosh! A dark purple wolf-shaped divine soul charged out of the rain of blood. Burning with dark red flames, it sped towards the north. Even though Song Yu's physical body was destroyed and only his divine soul was left, he still did not give up. However, he still didn't give up on escaping. He used a secret technique at all costs and flashed through the night sky. Ji Tianxing stared coldly at the divine soul. He raised his right hand unhurriedly and formed a few hand seals with his hands. Condense! Following his cold shout, the scattered starlight in the night sky immediately condensed into a giant sword that was thousands of feet long, like a white rainbow. Kill! Ji Tianxing shouted again and pointed at the fleeing Song Yu with his right hand. the 1,000-foot-long starlight sword immediately turned into a ray of silver light and began its pursuit. The starlight sword was so fast that it even left behind a dazzling trail of flames. In just 2 short breaths, the starlight sword had crossed 500 kilometers and viciously struck Songyu's divine soul. Bang! With a deafening sound, the wolf-shaped divine soul collapsed on the spot, exploding into dozens of pieces that scattered into the night sky. A martial saint expert, the infamous second demon Saint Songyu, had died just like that. Even Ji Tianxing was rather surprised and could not help but frown. The demon race has always been cunning and treacherous. They will not die so easily. Did Songyu not have a backup plan, such as cultivating the celestial demon jade seed technique or some ultimate life-saving technique? Earlier, he had thought that killing Songyu would take some effort and waste some time. He had not imagined that it would be so easy. He had not even used his trump card. However, on second thought, Songyu had just been heavily injured and had not recovered from his injuries. He only had around 70% of his strength. It was inevitable that he would be killed. Whoosh! Ji Tianxing flew to the place where the divine soul fragments were scattered. He waved his hand and sent out several rays of golden light, picking up the fragments. Then he used the divine power of the heaven-mending orb to purify the divine soul fragments. Chapter 21-27. Ji Tianxing had successfully broken through to the martial sage realm, and he had killed Songyu. He had achieved all his goals in this battle. Hence, he turned and flew toward Fish Dragon Mountain. Now, he only had one goal left, and that was to destroy the million-strong demon army at Fish Dragon Mountain. Swoosh! Ji Tianxing strode across the night sky and returned to the sky above Fish Dragon Mountain in 10 breaths. Although the 600,000-strong human tribe soldiers were still lying in ambush outside the camp. Without Ji Tianxing's orders, they wouldn't attack without permission. However, the entire Fish Dragon Mountain was in chaos. The commander-in-chief, Songyu, was dead. More than a dozen demon generals and blood god sons had also been killed. Even the 100,000 demon tribe soldiers who had attacked Ji Tianxing had died under the starry sword rain and were crushed into powder. As the starry sword rain poured down, the area within a radius of a few hundred miles was affected. Even though Fish Dragon Mountain had a defensive array, it was riddled with holes by the starry sword rain and shattered into pieces. It was no longer there. Fish Dragon Mountain, which was 3,000 feet tall, had been reduced to ruins by the starry sword rain. More than half of the majestic mountain had collapsed and countless rocks were scattered in all directions, crashing into the demon tribe camp. At least tens of thousands of demon tribe soldiers had died when Fish Dragon Mountain collapsed. The demon tribe camp had been reduced to a mess. Hundreds of thousands of demon tribe soldiers ran around in a panic, shouting anxiously and helplessly. Most of the soldiers were facing a situation where they couldn't find their general and couldn't hear his orders. Only a small number of demon tribe soldiers who were in charge of logistics and fortifications were busy clearing the ruins and rescuing the injured demon tribe soldiers. Ji Tianxing stood in the night sky and looked down at the situation below. He slowly lifted his hand and released a ray of golden light. Swoosh! The golden light shot up into the sky and formed a golden divine dragon in the sky. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws as it roared. In an instant, the area within a radius of 1,000 miles was illuminated by the golden light. A loud dragon roar reverberated in all directions. This was the signal to attack. The human tribe soldiers who had been lying in ambush around the demon tribe camp could not suppress their desire to fight. Once they saw the signal to attack, a loud bugle horn sounded in the army. Countless soldiers shouted excitedly, "Kill! Charge into the demon race's camp and kill them all. Warriors of the Scarlet Sun Empire, it's time to make a name for yourself. Make a name for yourself tonight." Along with the battle cries, the 600,000-strong human army surged toward the Fish Dragon Mountain camp from all directions like a tide. The scouts of the devil race had long discovered the existence of the human army. As early as when Ji Tianxing and Songyu were fighting a great battle, there were already several 100,000 fiend army guarding the surroundings of the camp, preventing the human army from launching a sneak attack. However, the power of Ji Tianxing and Song Yu's battle was too great. This was especially true for the sword rain, which brought about a devastating disaster to Mount Fish Dragon. The entire devil army camp was in chaos. Naturally, no one cared about defense. It was only when the human race army began to charge that the demon race soldiers finally reacted. They hurriedly took out their weapons and ran around the camp to defend. If they had the protection of a saint-level defensive formation, the devil race army would still have the power to fight. Unfortunately, the defensive formation had long been destroyed. Before long, the human race army successfully passed through the broken formation and charged into the camp. The two armies clashed and immediately engaged in a bitter and bloody battle. However, the devil race army was panicking. Their morale was low, and everyone was anxious. However, the human race army was full of vigor and excitement. The soldiers seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. The result of the battle between the two sides could be imagined. Clang, 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 boom, 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 boom. The clashing of weapons, the explosions of Dharma arts and secret techniques, and the clashing of experts converged into a deafening sound wave that reverberated endlessly in the night sky. Ji Tianxing stood high in the sky, looking down indifferently. There was neither sorrow nor joy on his face. Seeing the human soldiers charging bravely but still suffering a large number of casualties, he could not help but frown. Even though the devil race did not have a commander and their morale was very low, they did not lose their ability to fight. In this desperate situation, the devil race became even more ferocious. They would rather fight like caged beasts than easily retreat. The human race army had to kill 10,000 devil race soldiers, which meant 3,000 to 4,000 casualties. This was not good news. Thus, Ji Tianxing had to act personally to speed up the slaughter of the devil race army. 5-colored divine lightning. Ji Tianxing waved his left hand, and his sleeves fluttered, sending down pillars of lightning that filled the sky. Boom, boom, boom. Hundreds of 5-colored pillars of lightning landed in the midst of the devil race army with a deafening boom. Instantly, the dilapidated fish dragon mountain was completely shattered by the heavenly lightning, collapsing into a large expanse of scorched earth and ruins. Tens of thousands of devil race soldiers were killed on the spot by the heavenly lightning, turning into charcoal and dust that scattered among the ruins. Meteor fire shower. Ji Tianxing formed a spell with his right hand, directing the power of the stars and heavenly fire in the 9 heavens to bombard the devil race army. Immediately, hundreds of dazzling meteors, accompanied by crimson heavenly fire, rained down from the sky. Boosh, boom, boom, boom. Everything within a 200-mile radius was turned into a sea of fire. The meteors blasted countless holes in the ground, sending smoke and dust into the air. The ruins of the collapsed fish dragon mountain were blasted away on the spot. Another 300,000 devil race soldiers were burned to ashes by the sea of fire, dying without a complete corpse. The devil race army was completely scared out of their wits. Their anger and murderous intent had all dissipated. Ji Tianxing stood in the night sky like a deity. Every move he made could unleash a calamity that could destroy the world. How could they continue fighting? If they delayed any longer, Ji Tianxing could probably use a few more moves to destroy everything within a 1,000-mile radius. By then, even 3 or 5 million devil race soldiers would not be enough for him to slaughter, let alone 1 million. This guy was no longer human. He was a god. The most terrifying killing god. Soon, the devil race army began to crumble. They fled toward the north in a panic. The pressure on the human army was greatly reduced. They immediately cheered excitedly and chased after the devil race soldiers. Ji Tianxing saw that the two armies were mixed up and it was no longer suitable for him to release powerful moves, so he stopped. After all, only about 400,000 devil race soldiers were left after his massacre, and they were all remnants of defeated soldiers. Leaving the 600,000 human soldiers to chase after the devil race soldiers would definitely result in a complete victory. He stood in the night sky with his hands behind his back, silently watching the battlefield and waiting for the battle to end. After a full 2 hours, the battle finally came to an end. Another 300,000 devil race soldiers were killed by the human army. The entire camp of the devil race was razed to the ground and completely destroyed. Only 80,000 devil race soldiers were left. They scattered into dozens of small groups and fled into the mountains in the north. Ji Tianxing sent out 2 generals, each leading 50,000 soldiers to chase after the devil race soldiers. The remaining human army remained on the battlefield. Not only did they have to clean up the battlefield, but they also had to treat the wounded soldiers. After they were done, they could return to the Starfall Valley. This would take another 2 hours. Ji Tianxing could not be bothered to wait, so he left this matter to the 4 generals. Chapter 21-28. After leaving the battlefield, Ji Tianxing flew in the night sky as he thought about his next plan. The barracks of Mount Fish Dragon had been destroyed and Song Yu had been killed by him. The commander-in-chief of the northern region was dead and there was no demon sage to guard the place. Now, there were only 2 barracks and a few forts outside Fallen Stars Valley and 2 million demon tribe troops. There were still 3 million demon tribe troops in the barracks and forts outside Sirius Pass. As long as he killed the 5 million demon tribe troops, the war in the northern region would be over. Even if there were some remaining demon tribe troops, they would not be able to pose much of a threat. Unknowingly, Ji Tianxing was 2,000 miles away from Mount Fish Dragon. It was the darkest moment of the day, just before dawn. He was flying over a vast mountain range and was still thinking about something. Suddenly, a crisp and pleasant female voice rang in the night sky. "Ho ho, the invincible commander-in-chief Ji has fallen into such a sorry state?" The sudden voice interrupted Ji Tianxing's thoughts. He immediately stopped and raised his eyebrows as he looked at the night sky in front of him. Thousands of meters away in the night sky, there was a woman in a golden dress who was indescribably beautiful. The woman was tall and beautiful. Her temperament was noble and coquettish, and she was full of a captivating aura. She stood in the night sky gracefully, and the phoenix crown on her head shone brightly. The long golden dress hung behind her and swayed gently in the night wind, making her look ethereal. Unfortunately, she looked at Ji Tianxing with a cold smile and her words were sarcastic. Ji Tianxing took a look at her and frowned. A look of astonishment flashed across his eyes. This woman, why does she look so familiar? Her spiritual soul aura is also familiar? Is she from the Chanu tribe? Martial Sage realm? Could it be her? These thoughts flashed across Ji Tianxing's mind. In just a breath, he recognized the woman. She was the leader of the Chanu tribe, Empress Tent. However, even though Ji Tianxing's heart wavered, he remained calm on the surface and did not reveal any abnormalities. He looked at Empress Tantai indifferently and said coldly, "Who are you? Why are you blocking my way?" Empress Tantai looked at him meaningfully for a moment, then pretended to be charming and said with a smile, "This Empress is a citizen of the Scarlet Sun Empire. I wanted to welcome Marshal Ji's triumphant return. Who would have thought that Grand Marshal Ji would be so severely injured and end up in such a sorry state? He even abandoned hundreds of thousands of soldiers and fled back alone. It's really hard to believe that the invincible Marshal Ji actually has a time when he has to flee." Empress Tantai pretended to be sorry, but her expression and tone were full of undisguised complacency and ridicule. Ji Tianxing was speechless for a moment, not knowing how to answer. He lowered his head and looked at himself. Only then did he come to a realization. It turned out that during the previous battle, his white robe was stained with blood and had long turned purplish-black. He looked rather miserable. "I see," he said in his heart, basically guessing the purpose of Empress Tantai's visit. But he did not explain. He looked at Empress Tantai calmly and asked indifferently, "So, you deliberately waited for me here to laugh at me or to kill me?" Empress Tantai pretended to be stunned for a moment, looked at him with puzzlement, and asked affectionately, "Why would Grand Marshal Ji think of this Empress as that kind of person? This Empress can't wait to love you. How can I kill you?" Hearing the words "love you," Ji Tianxing instinctively felt disgusted and frowned with a cold face. "Please conduct yourself with dignity, Ben Shuai and you don't know each other." Empress Tantai exclaimed in surprise and asked incredulously, Grand Marshal Ji, do you really not remember this empress? 1,000 years ago, this empress was your most beloved woman. At that time, you held this empress in the palm of your hand and cared for me in every way possible. You couldn't wait to hold this empress in your mouth. Empress Tantai held her chest with both hands, with a look of heartache. Her clear eyes were full of mist, and she looked like she was about to cry. Ji Tianxing frowned and almost couldn't help but curse her for being shameless. However, he guessed Empress Tantai's intention and could only remain calm and restrained. He shook his head expressionlessly and said, "You've got the wrong person, Ben Shuai is not yet 30 years old. For a woman like you who has lived for more than 1,000 years, Ben Shuai can't have emotional entanglements with you. Ben Shuai's taste is not that heavy." Empress Tantai was humiliated by him, but she was not angry. Instead, she felt even more wronged. 2 lines of crystal-clear tears burst out of her eyes and rolled down her white cheeks. "Kenja, you heartless man, did you really lose your memory and forget about this empress? You once said that this empress is your heart, your eyes, your most beloved Xiaolantian. We once swore to the sun and the moon that we would be together for all eternity." Empress Tantai's expression and tone were very real, as if she was really heartbroken and hurt by love. Ji Tianxing had goosebumps all over his body. Unable to bear it, he shouted angrily with a black face, "Enough! Shut the hell up! Tantai Xianxia, this seat will say it for the last time, whether it is the previous life, this life or the next life, this seat will not have any feelings for you. You can be shameless and have no bottom line, but this seat disdains to be associated with you, lest you tarnish this seat's reputation." Suddenly hearing this sentence, the tears on Empress Tantai's face dried up in an instant, and the sadness disappeared in an instant. She pointed her finger at Ji Tianxing and laughed out loud in an unrestrained manner. Pa, didn't you pretend not to know this empress? Finally can't pretend anymore? Kenshin, you didn't expect it, did you? After 1,000 years, you and I actually meet again. Ji Tianxing said indifferently, "But when we meet again, you still haven't changed. You are still as unrestrained and disgusting as before." Empress Tantai's laughter gradually stopped, and her face gradually turned cold. She stared at Ji Tianxing with resentment. She walked slowly towards Ji Tianxing and said in a cold voice, "Kenshin, this empress has deep feelings for you, and has been infatuated with you for hundreds of years. In order to be with you, this empress was not even afraid of being ridiculed by the world and took the initiative to send herself into your arms. But you? How did you treat this empress back then? And how you humiliated this consort in front of everyone? Could it be that you've forgotten? How can there be such a heartless and cold-blooded thing like you in this world? Now that you have come back from the dead and have started over, you are still so heartless when you see this empress again. Even if you have been reborn, do you still have no feelings for this empress?" Ji Tianxing looked at her with a cold face and said firmly, "Of course not." Haha. Empress Tantai sneered with a face full of self-mockery. While walking towards him, she reached out to untie her golden dress. Chapter 21-29. Under the hazy moonlight, the night wind was cold. Empress Tantai's golden dress hung down to her waist, revealing her snow-white and tender shoulders. A thin white gauze wrapped around her chest, but it could not cover the towering peaks. Facing such a tempting scenery, Ji Tianxing was still indifferent. He closed his eyes and said indifferently, "Tanai Xian, you know the answer, why do you want to humiliate yourself?" Empress Tantai came in front of him and stopped 10 steps away from him. The self-deprecating sneer on her face gradually turned into resentment and anger. She glared at Ji Tianxing and shouted coldly, "You don't even dare to look at me? Do you really despise me so much? There are countless men in the world who are obsessed with me, only you are so disdainful of me." Ji Tianxing said calmly, "No matter how beautiful the skin is, it's just a pink skeleton. Only shallow and lecherous men will be fascinated by you. There are countless men in the world, how can they all be infatuated with you? That's just your imagination. What's more, you have lived for thousands of years, and in order to cultivate the enchanted woman technique, you have sucked countless men dry. A pair of jade arms for thousands of men to sleep on, 2 red lips for tens of thousands of men to taste. As long as they are clean men, they will not like you. Empress Tantai stared at Ji Tianxing with wide eyes. After being stunned for a moment, she suddenly burst into laughter. A pair of jade arms for thousands of men to sleep on? 2 red lips for tens of thousands of men to taste? Ha! So that's how it is. This consort finally understood. Was this the reason why you looked down on and humiliated this consort? Then what if I tell you that things are not as you think? I have indeed cultivated the enchanted woman technique and swallowed the essence and power of tens of thousands of men. But the men who have really had sex with me are no more than 10. And they are all famous overlords, all famous martial saints. Ji Tianxing still closed his eyes and said expressionlessly, 10, 100, or 1,000, what's the difference? You don't have to tell me anything because it has nothing to do with me. Tandai Xian, I'll make things clear again tonight. I hope you can respect yourself and not make any more mistakes. Empress Tantai sneered as she put on her golden dress and fastened her collar. What a good, don't make mistakes. Kenshin, you're still the same as before, cold and heartless, as stubborn as a rock. Before tonight, this consort's heart had softened and I had hesitated whether or not I should come and see you. However, this consort is still unwilling to give up. This consort still harbors a trace of hope, thinking that you might change your mind after being reborn. If you still haven't recovered your memories, this consort will wholeheartedly protect you and serve you wholeheartedly. Now, it seems that this consort was overthinking things again. Empress Tantai's tone became colder and colder. Apparently, she had completely given up and no longer had any illusions. Ji Tianxing opened his eyes and looked at her. With a calm expression, he said, "It's good that you can understand. Why bother me again? From now on, we won't have anything to do with each other. Don't appear in front of me. Goodbye." After that, he cupped his hands to Empress Tantai and was about to leave. Empress Tantai sneered, You're really confident and naive. Do you think this consort came to you tonight just to reconnect with you? Impossible. You've hurt this consort too deeply and I've suffered great shame and humiliation. How can I just let it go like this? Back then, this consort wanted to take revenge on you, but your strength was too high and you ascended to the upper realm. Now that you're cultivating from the beginning and your strength is so weak, this is a great opportunity for this consort to take revenge. But don't worry, this consort will never kill you. This consort will let you live well, be this consort's boy toy, kneel at my feet every day, and kiss my toes. As soon as her voice fell, Empress Tantai no longer concealed her intentions. Her palms shot out like lightning, and a pink brilliance shot towards Ji Tianxing. The pink light was the special power of the enchantress art, which had the effect of seducing the soul. Once eroded by the pink light, one would lose their mind and become a puppet under Empress Tantai's control. I've already expected that you're up to no good. Ji Tianxing was already prepared. He sneered contemptuously and shot out a dazzling star fire towards Empress Tant. Boom! The starlight and the pink light collided, and a thunderous sound erupted. The night sky within a few hundred miles was lit up, and the earth trembled violently. The two of them were evenly matched, and neither of them had gained the upper hand. Empress Tantai's face changed immediately. She frowned and said in a low voice, "Damn it! Your strength has recovered so quickly, and you've already surpassed the rank 6 martial sage realm?" Ji Tianxing chuckled, "You're wrong. I've just broken through to the martial sage realm tonight. You should have seen the heavenly vision earlier, right?" "That's impossible." Empress Tantai couldn't believe it, and she shouted in shock, "You've killed 2 demon sages a long time ago, so you must have reached the martial sage realm long ago. Moreover, you've just broken through to the martial sage realm, so how can you have such strength?" Ji Tianxing said calmly, "Don't forget who I am. Nothing is impossible for me." Empress Tantai's body trembled, and she came to her senses, muttering to herself, "Yes. How could I forget that you're the famous Kenshin, the immortal king of the galaxy? However, it's too early for you to be proud. I was just testing you. and I haven't even used 70% of my strength. I've said that I'll make you my pet tonight, and you'll never escape." After saying that, Empress Tantai made a series of hand seals and quickly formed a mysterious seal. Heavenly Star Rain. Enchantress seduces the soul. Following her cold shout, the night sky around Ji Tianxing immediately lit up with a pink light that soared into the sky. Swoosh! In the blink of an eye, the pink light formed a light shield that covered a radius of 300 miles, covering the entire area. Around Ji Tianxing, four women appeared out of thin air. They were about 100 feet tall, and they were wearing short skirts. These women all looked 70% like Empress Tantai. Their appearances were full of exotic charm. Their clear eyes were captivating, and they exuded an intoxicating charm. The four women were slim, and they were as plump as peaches. They were so tender that it seemed like water would come out of them. They were only wearing a chest wrap and a very short skirt that was made of translucent white gauze. From time to time, some seductive scenes could be seen, which made one's imagination run wild. This huge pink light shield was Empress Tantai's unique skill, the Ecstasy Realm. Inside it, one's spiritual soul would be invaded at any time, and one would not be able to concentrate. Chapter 2130. An invisible soul-sucking power quietly invaded Ji Tianxing's body, causing his mind to be distracted. He quickly activated the power of the heaven-mending orb to wrap his divine soul to keep his mind clear. At the same time, Empress Tantai's sleeves fluttered as she danced with two colorful ribbons in her hands, sprinkling dazzling light that blotted out the sky. Ji Tianxing quickly took out the Burial of Heaven sword and used his unique swordsmanship to fight against her. Sword of Shattering Sun. The Burial of Heaven sword instantly stabbed out hundreds of sword lights, forming a mysterious sword array and stabbing at the dazzling light all over the sky. Bang, 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 bang. In a series of muffled sounds, the sword lights and colorful dazzling light exploded at the same time, turning into a rain of fragments that scattered in the field. At this time, the four demon beauties rushed over and besieged him. They were holding a sword, a jade flute, a long whip, and two sabers respectively, slashing at Ji Tianxing. With every movement, the thin white veil fluttered, revealing a blushing scene that made people unable to look directly at. If it were a lecherous lecher, it would be a feast for the eyes. Unfortunately, Ji Tianxing was not a lecher and did not bother to look at it. He simply closed his eyes, using the heavenly dragon palm with his left hand and a dozen sword lights with his right hand to resist the siege of the four demon beauties. Bang, 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 clang, clang. A burst of sword lights colliding and the sound of weapons clashing came out, and the four demon beauties were all sent flying by Ji Tianxing. They did not cry out in pain or scream, but let out a burst of shuddering gasps and coquettishness, which was very nauseating. Ji Tianxing glared at Empress Tantai fiercely and scolded with a black face. "Tantai Xian, you really have no bottom line, using such a dirty trick." Empress Tantai waved her colorful ribbons to speed up the attack while laughing loudly. "Ha, which man is not lecherous? Isn't this what you want? If you want to see it, just enjoy it. Why hide it? Shameless." Ji Tianxing frowned and scolded, using all his strength to fight back. However, the angrier he was, the happier Empress Tantai was. While fighting Ji Tianxing, she threw him a coquettish glance and said with a charming tone, "Those four beautiful women are not illusions. They are my trusted maidservants who have been carefully cultivated by me for hundreds of years. Why don't we stop here? Let's go find a cave and let this consort and the four servant girls serve you well. Both of us are proficient in the enchanted woman art. Coupled with our special physiques, I guarantee that you'll be unable to extricate yourself from the ecstasy." Ji Tianxing's face darkened, and he scolded coldly, "Tantai Xian, do you have any sense of shame? Your mind is filled with the thoughts of men and women having sexual intercourse. Instead of being ashamed of it, you're proud of it. What an eye-opener." The smile on Empress Tantai's face grew brighter as she said in a seductive manner, "Back then, you were so high and mighty that you didn't even spare me a glance. Even if this consort were to kneel in front of you and beg to be your personal maidservant without any status, you would still refuse. I didn't expect you to have such a day. Even if you're humiliated by this consort, no matter how angry you are, you can't do anything to me. This is so interesting, so satisfying. This consort can't wait any longer. I just want to capture you immediately, turn you into a pet boy, and then find ways to pamper you. Don't worry, this consort has a lot of tricks. Even if I pamper you for 10 years and you don't get out of bed, there won't be any repeated positions. Ji Tianxing was completely speechless. He had fought and killed tens of thousands of enemies all his life. He had experienced tens of thousands of battles and killed millions of enemies. He had personally experienced all kinds of dangerous scenes, such as mountains of swords, seas of fire, rivers of blood, and purgatory. Only this battle was so special. This was the most erotic, awkward, and speechless battle in his life. No matter if it was a sinister and cunning enemy or a fierce and overbearing enemy, he had ways to deal with and solve them. Only a woman like Tan Tai Xian, who had no bottom line and was even more shameless, made him feel deeply helpless. Tan Tai Xian was born to be an unrestrained and seductive demoness. Every look in her eyes and every word she said was tinged with a pink hue. Normal people couldn't communicate with her properly. Ji Tianxing not only closed his eyes, but he also didn't even bother to speak and launched a counterattack with all his strength. He used his divine sense to explore the entire ecstasy domain, fighting with Empress Tan Tai and the Four Beauties. Under the investigation of his divine sense, Empress Tan Tai and the Four Beauties were all white skeletons, without the slightest sense of beauty. Even if Empress Tan Tai kept saying lewd words that made people blush and let out a few rippling gasps from time to time, he turned a deaf ear to it. In just 100 breaths of time, the two sides fought over 1,000 moves, but there was no clear winner. Ji Tianxing was deeply besieged, but he was also unharmed. Empress Tan Tai had been holding the initiative, attacking like a storm, but she still couldn't gain the upper hand. As for the Four Beauties, they were sent flying again and again by Ji Tianxing, adding a few more wounds on their bodies, and dark red blood oozed out. But they didn't know pain at all, and turned a blind eye to their injuries, desperately besieging Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing found that Empress Tan Tai had lied to him. They were not 4 maidservants at all, nor were they living people, but 4 puppets refined by a secret method, similar to magic weapons. However, these 4 beauties were refined very exquisitely and lifelike. After the two sides fought for more than a dozen moves, Ji Tianxing decisively seized the opportunity and used his unique skill. Burial of Heaven Sword. He shouted coldly, holding the Burial of Heaven Sword with both hands, and stabbed at the sky with all his strength. Swoosh! A black light rushed into the sky as if to pierce the sky. This sword technique was the last move of the Burial of Heaven 9 swords, and it was also the most powerful move. In the next moment, the pitch-black beam of light pierced the pink light barrier and exploded with a thunderous boom. Kaboom! A large hole was instantly pierced through the gigantic pink light barrier, and cracks began to appear all around it. Empress Tan Tai's ecstasy domain, which she was proud of, was pierced by Ji Tianxing's sword. When the domain was broken, she also suffered a backlash. Her body stiffened immediately, and blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Tianxing formed a sword technique with both hands and performed another unique sword technique. 10,000 swords return. Following his cold shout, tens of thousands of cracks instantly appeared in the gloomy sky above. Outside the void, endless star power condensed into tens of thousands of giant starry swords, pouring through the cracks. In just a short breath, tens of thousands of starry swords fell like a meteor shower. Boom, boom, boom. The starry swords all hit the pink light shield, and a loud noise shook the 9 heavens. A total of more than 5,000 starry swords collapsed on the spot, and turned into starlight that illuminated the night sky. The pink light shield within a radius of 300 miles was also completely destroyed and torn apart. Empress Tan Tai was using all her strength to cast a spell, controlling the ecstasy domain to resist the bombardment of the 10,000 swords. But she failed in the end and couldn't block it. Puff. Chapter 2131. The ecstasy domain collapsed and dissipated. Ji Tianxing and Empress Tantai's figures reappeared in the night sky. The four scarred beauties temporarily lost their function and were put away by Empress Tantai. She raised her sleeve to wipe the blood from the corner of her mouth and slowly looked up at Ji Tianxing. Her eyes were full of resentment as she scolded, "You heartless man, what a cruel heart." Ji Tianxing looked at her expressionlessly and said calmly, "I have already said that there is nothing between you and me. I have never had feelings for you. How can I be heartless?" Empress Tantai frowned and curled her lips, "I don't care. In short, you are the one who has betrayed me." Ji Tianxing also frowned. With a dark face, he said with an indifferent tone, "Don't you want to take revenge? Do you still want to fight? If not, I'm leaving." After that, he turned around and was about to leave. He was too lazy to be entangled with Empress Tantai. Empress Tantai did not give up. She teleported in front of him and blocked his way. "Don't you think you can get rid of me? After being humiliated by you, I have endured more than 300 years of humiliation and had to live in seclusion. For the past 1,000 years, I have hated you day and night. Now that the heavens have taken pity on you and sent you back to me, how can I let you go?" Ji Tianxing looked at her coldly and said in a serious tone, "Tandai Xian, I am warning you for the last time. Don't pester me endlessly, or you will have to bear the consequences." Empress Tantai saw that he seemed to be really angry and immediately put on an aggrieved expression and was about to cry. She slowly walked towards Ji Tianxing and said in a choked voice, "You bastard, why do you treat me like this? I am so infatuated with you, why do you keep rejecting and hurting me? I know that you were obsessed with martial arts in your previous life and never had feelings for any woman. But in this life, you already have a sweetheart, which proves that you are not a god but also a person with feelings. If you can love that woman deeply, why can't you give me some of your feelings?" Ji Tianxing's expression was indifferent as he said, "It seems that Guanji really is a spy sent by you. She actually managed to find out so much information. That's right, not only did I love her deeply, but I also married her and had a pair of children with her. She is the person I love the most in this life, the person I will protect for the rest of my life, but you are not qualified to be mentioned in the same breath as her. Not to mention that I am her husband and must be loyal to her, even if she didn't exist, I would never accept you." Empress Tantai's face was filled with despair, and her bright eyes dimmed. She stood in front of Ji Tianxing and said in a low voice, "All right, since you already have someone in your heart, I will fulfill your wish and will no longer pester you. However, you and I have been entangled for 1,000 years, but I have never even held your hand. I only have one wish. Can you give me a hug? This way I'll give up. From now on, I'll never appear in front of you again." After saying that, she slowly stretched out her arms as if she wanted to hug Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing instinctively stepped back and was about to sternly refuse. But her face was pale and her spirit was dispirited. She looked weak and pitiful, but her eyes were full of hope. She laughed bitterly at herself and said, "In front of the world, I am the noble and arrogant empress of the Cha-Nu tribe, but in front of you, I have abandoned all my dignity and even have no bottom line. Are you really so heartless that you won't even give me a trace of sympathy and pity?" Ji Tianxing frowned and fell into hesitation. After a moment of silence, he asked in a deep voice, "Can you swear to God that if I fulfill your wish, you will completely give up and never pester me again?" Empress Tantai's eyes were rekindled with hope, and she raised her hand to swear to God without hesitation. "I, Tantai Xian, swear that as long as Kenshin fulfills my wish, I will leave from his sight and never appear again. If I violate this oath, I am willing to be punished by God." Seeing Tantai Xian's serious face and firm and decisive tone, Ji Tianxing gradually lowered his guard. Perhaps, I was indeed too heartless and too harsh on her? This thought flashed through his mind, and he sighed secretly and said in a calm tone, "In that case, I promise you, but don't have any improper thoughts." After that, he stood upright in the night sky with his arms hanging by his side and closed his eyes. "Kenshin, thank you." Empress Tantai thanked him sincerely, and her eyes flashed with joy. Then she stretched out her weak arms, hugged Ji Tianxing's waist tightly, and put her cheek on his chest. Feeling his body temperature and heartbeat, as well as the masculine breath of a man, Empress Tantai's heart suddenly beat faster, and a happy smile appeared on her face. The next moment, a golden light suddenly lit up in her palm, and a dark golden rope appeared. At the same time, she whispered in a strange tone, "Kenshin, you miscalculated. How can I let you go? How can I bear to see you with another woman?" When she said this, the dark golden rope in her palm began to dance like a spirit snake. In the blink of an eye, the dark golden rope had wrapped itself around Ji Tianxing's body more than 30 times, completely tying him up. He was tied up tightly, and his arms were pressed tightly to his sides. His legs and feet could not move. Not only that, the dark golden rope was not an ordinary object. It released a mysterious and powerful sealing power, and sealed his body and spiritual power on the spot. He was tied up like a dumpling, and his body was stiff and fixed in place, and he had lost the ability to resist. Other than opening and closing his eyes, he could do nothing else. Haha. Success. It took me 100 years to find this god-binding rope, and it was refined from the legendary tendons of the divine dragon. Not to mention that you are only a martial sage. Even if you are a martial god, you will not be able to escape from it. Empress Tantai let go of him and laughed complacently. She stood in front of Ji Tianxing, reached out and stroked his cheek, and said with a serious face, "From tonight onwards, you are mine, and you will not be able to escape in this lifetime." Ji Tianxing looked at her calmly. He didn't panic, nor did he reveal a trace of anger. "As I expected, you have been intertwined in love and hate for thousands of years, and your mind has long been distorted. How can you abide by the oath? However, you have just made an oath, and you have broken it in the blink of an eye. Are you really not afraid of the wrath of heaven?" Empress Tantai shook her head, stretched out 2 fingers, and pressed them on his lips, and said with a smile, "It is not that my mind is distorted, but that I have long gone crazy. As for the wrath of heaven? As long as I can have you, so what if I suffer the wrath of heaven?" Ji Tianxing sighed helplessly and asked, "What is it about me that makes you so crazy? Tell me and I will change, okay?" Empress Tantai thought seriously for a moment and said in a firm tone, "You are the #1 genius, the #1 talent, the most mysterious and the most powerful man in the world. I really can't find any man in this world who is more outstanding than you. So, you are destined to be my man." Chapter 2132. Tandaisian, you are playing with fire. Ji Tianxing looked at Empress Tantai coldly and warned her in a solemn tone. Empress Tantai didn't take it seriously. She curled her lips in disdain and sneered, "Now you are tied up by my god-binding rope and can only be at my mercy. Besides threatening me, what can you do to me? I won't play with fire tonight, I will only play with you." In Ji Tianxing's mind, the voice of Burial of Heaven immediately sounded. "Ahem. I have endured for a long time. This time, I really can't help it. There are some things that need to be said. This Tantai Xian, has already fallen in love with you. Why don't you take pity on her and give in to her?" Ji Tianxing's forehead was full of black lines. He replied with his divine soul, "Burial of Heaven, you are encouraging me like this. Are you tempted? Why don't you transform into a human form and go back with her instead of me and accompany her?" Burial of Heaven snorted disdainfully and said in a low voice, "This old man is the soul of the divine sword, not a mortal creature. How can I have a mortal heart? However, her so-called god-binding rope is a fake. You can obviously break free. Why are you willing to be tied up by her? This old man thinks you have a hard mouth but a soft heart. Your mouth says no, but your body is very honest." "Shut up!" Ji Tianxing shouted angrily, "Don't frame me. I don't have that kind of idea. I have always stayed away from this kind of wanton crazy woman. The reason why I didn't make a move is that I want to see what she wants to do. 1,000 years have passed, and the situation of the continent is different from before. It has long become very complicated." "Okay, you're right." Burial of Heaven responded indifferently, "Then you go back with her to the bridal chamber." "You." Ji Tianxing was suddenly angry, but he couldn't defend himself. At this time, Empress Tantai saw him silent, stretched out 2 fingers, raised his chin, and asked with a charming smile, "What are you thinking about? Do you think it is a bit inappropriate for us to consummate our marriage here in the wilderness? Don't worry, I will take you back to the imperial court and settle you down in the palace. I will also send many maids to serve you." After that, she carried Ji Tianxing in one hand and flew to the southeast. Ji Tianxing frowned, and a look of doubt flashed in his eyes. He thought, imperial court? Which imperial court? Is it the imperial court of the imperial court of Chang? Can it be that Tantai Xian'er and the imperial court of the empire? Thinking of this, he felt things the matter. Therefore, he suppressed his doubts and allowed Empress Tantai to carry him as they flew through the night sky at lightning speed. Empress Tantai's speed was extremely fast. Every step she took could cross 50 miles. In a short 2 hours, she had flown 30,000 kilometers away. In order not to be discovered, Empress Tantai flew 10,000 meters above the clouds and sped up. About 10 hours later, she finally arrived at the imperial city of the Changyang Empire. At this time, she used the invisibility secret technique to hide herself and Ji Tianxing. Whoosh! She descended from the sky and flew to the bustling imperial city of the Changyang Empire. It was afternoon, and the warm sun shone on the Changyang Empire. But inside and outside the Changyang Empire, there was a bleak scene. The city walls were full of armored soldiers. In the imperial city, there were no crowds or merchants. The streets and alleys were deserted. Obviously, most of the people in the Changyang Empire had fled because of the war in the north. Ji Tianxing looked at the Changyang Empire calmly and thought to himself, Tantai Xian are really colluded with the Changyang Empire. Her nest is in the imperial city. So, it must be Du Chengchang who deliberately arranged for Guanji to be a spy by my side. After a while, Empress Tantai took him and flew into the magnificent imperial palace. The imperial palace of the Changyang Empire was located in the center of the city. It covered more than 10 miles and had tens of thousands of houses and palaces. It was very solemn and imposing. Empress Tantai's residence was in the inner courtyard of the imperial palace, in the main hall of the Phoenix Palace. Phoenix Palace? Isn't this the palace of the Empress? Could it be that Tantai Xian'er, she married the Changyang Holy Emperor and became the Empress? Ji Tianxing frowned, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Sure enough, after Empress Tantai entered the Phoenix Palace, she returned to the luxurious and bright palace. She threw Ji Tianxing on the bed and covered him with a brocade quilt. Then, she called in a dignified tone, "Where is Wanru?" The door of the palace opened immediately. A young woman in a palace dress walked in quickly with her head lowered. She walked to the middle of the palace and bowed respectfully. "This servant greets the Empress. Please give me your orders." Empress Tantai said calmly, "Help me bathe and change my clothes." This servant obeys. The maidservant bowed and exited the bedchamber. Empress Tantai returned to the bedside and stroked Ji Tianxing's cheek. She smiled tenderly and said, "Don't worry, I'll take a bath now. I'll be clean and then I'll pamper you." Ji Tianxing felt a chill and goosebumps appeared all over his body. He almost couldn't help but break free from the god-binding rope. But he held back, closed his eyes and remained silent. He wanted to see what other tricks Tantai Xian had up her sleeves. Most importantly, what role did the Changyang Holy Emperor play? Unknowingly, a quarter of an hour passed. After Empress Tantai took a bath, she took off her half-foot-high phoenix coronet, tied her hair into a noble woman's bun, and changed into a bright yellow dress. She returned to the palace alone, closed the door, and cast a spell to cover the entire palace. In this way, no matter what happened in the palace, the outside couldn't hear it. After she was ready, she kicked off her shoes and walked barefoot on the soft carpet toward the phoenix bed. Swoosh! The quilt was lifted. Empress Tantai stood by the bed and looked at Ji Tianxing with a smile. She reached out and brushed the long hair on her shoulder. She said with a charming face, "I've waited for 1,000 years, and my wish is finally coming true. Today, you are my most beloved Kenshin. I will do my best to serve you and bring you the most unforgettable pleasure. But tomorrow, you will be my male pet and servant. You can only be humiliated and ordered by me. So, enjoy today. After saying that, she slowly leaned over and sat on Ji Tianxing's body. She reached out and untied her long dress. An invisible charm spread out from her body and enveloped Ji Tianxing. The curtains around the phoenix bed also fell silently. A scene of spring breeze was about to unfold. But at this moment, Ji Tianxing, who had been keeping his eyes closed and silent, suddenly spoke. I've already said that you are playing with fire. My patience has been exhausted, and it's time to end everything. Chapter 2133. Empress Tantai had just taken off half of her clothes and was about to untie the white veil on her chest. But when she heard Ji Tianxing's words and saw the god-binding rope break into more than a dozen pieces, she was stunned on the spot. At the same time, Ji Tianxing raised his hand and slapped at her. Bam! The palm hit Empress Tantai's chest and sent her flying on the spot. She fell into the bedroom. Puff! She opened her mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. Her face became as pale as paper. She did not have time to tidy up her clothes and quickly stood up. Her eyes widened as she stared at Ji Tianxing in disbelief. My god-binding rope. How is this possible? How can you destroy my god-binding rope? She never thought that the god-binding rope that she had searched the entire continent to find would be broken by Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing, who was tied up, was originally a fish on the chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered by her. But now, everything was ruined. Ji Tianxing reached out and brushed off the 2 pieces of god-binding rope. He said expressionlessly, the real god-binding rope is a divine artifact. How can you have it? This god-binding rope of yours is nothing more than an ordinary saint artifact. This is impossible. Empress Tantai shouted coldly and shook her head repeatedly. She could not accept this result. He won't lie to me. This god-binding rope is indeed refined from dragon tendons. Ji Tianxing said indifferently, only the dragon tendons of the 9th heaven divine dragon can be refined into a real god-binding rope. Your god-binding rope is made from the tendons of a flood dragon. Who is this he you are talking about? He vaguely guessed that this god-binding rope was not found by Empress Tantai. It was very likely that some man had refined this dragon tendons into a magic weapon and gave it to her as a god-binding rope. Empress Tantai did not respond to Ji Tianxing's words. She looked at the broken rope on the ground and cursed angrily, Damn bastard, I trusted you so much and even became your wife. How dare you lie to me? When Ji Tianxing heard her say this, he immediately understood that the person she was talking about was most likely the Scarlet Sun Holy Emperor. At this time, Empress Tantai raised her head and glared at him with resentment. So what if the god-binding rope is fake? Since you're here, don't even think about escaping. As she spoke, she formed hand seals with both hands and shot out dozens of colorful lights at lightning speed. Swish, swish. The multicolored light flew out of the sleeping chamber and landed in all directions, immediately activating a sealing formation. Shwa. Outside the sleeping chamber, a 5-colored light shield with a radius of thousands of feet immediately lit up, enveloping the entire sleeping chamber. This was a saint-level grand formation that Empress Tantai had spent a lot of time and effort to set up. As soon as the grand formation was activated, it immediately released a terrifying invisible force and suppressed Ji Tianxing. At the same time, 2 colorful long silk appeared in Empress Tantai's hands. If I can't get the man, no other woman can. She glared at Ji Tianxing with a venomous look in her eyes. She waved a pair of rainbow-colored long silk and swept it towards Ji Tianxing. Swish, swish, swish. In an instant, the long silk danced out hundreds of colorful dazzling lights, like sharp blades, shrouding his figure. You've already gone mad. Ji Tianxing shouted in a deep voice. Today, we'll settle this once and for all. As he spoke, he formed a sword seal with both hands and released hundreds of sword lights, stabbing toward Empress Tantai. These sword lights were more than 10 feet long, formed by the power of stars and five-colored divine thunder. Their power was very violent. Bang! 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 The sword lights collided with the colorful dazzling lights, causing a series of muffled sounds, shaking the entire sleeping chamber violently. A violent shockwave exploded, instantly blowing up the sleeping quarters into smithereens. The ground paved with golden stones collapsed and the surrounding walls burst into rubble, turning a radius of 10,000 feet into ruins. Only the light barrier with a radius of 10,000 feet was still intact, sealing the ruins. Heavenly maidens scattering flowers. A cold light flashed in Empress Tantai's eyes as she finally made up her mind to use her trump card. She shouted coldly, waved the colorful long silk with both hands, and flew gracefully into the sky. The next moment, her figure became illusory and blurred, spinning at an extremely fast speed. Swish! 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 The colorful long silk splashed out endless light blades and pink light balls, like a torrential downpour, drowning Ji Tianxing. Within a radius of 10,000 feet, it was completely filled with light blades, like a pink hurricane. Not to mention a body of flesh and blood, even a divine artifact would be crushed into powder. However, Ji Tianxing's body lit up with silver starlight, forming an oval-shaped shield to protect himself. Thousands of light blades kept stabbing the starlight shield, letting out crisp, ding-ding-dang-dang sounds, but they could not break the shield. No matter how strong the light blades were, and how fierce their auras were, they could only leave dents on the starlight shield. Ji Tianxing continued to circulate his magic power, and soon the dents on the shield were repaired, leaving him unharmed. He looked up at Empress Tantai and said expressionlessly, "Tanisian, give up. 1,000 years have passed, and you haven't made much progress. You're only a level 7 martial sage. It's harder than ascending to heaven if you want to kill me." His tone was calm and indifferent, as if he was stating a fact. Empress Tantai was so angry that she had almost lost her mind and patience. "No. I don't believe it. You've just become a martial sage. How can you be my opponent? In another year or so, you'll be even stronger, and I won't have a chance anymore." Ji Tianxing shook his head gently and said coldly, "In terms of martial strength, you're too late. In terms of feelings, you've never had a chance. All right, I don't have time to play with you anymore. You should wake up." After saying that, he slowly raised his right hand, put his index finger and middle finger together, and pointed to the sky. As he shouted coldly, a huge crack suddenly appeared in the distant sky. A dazzling golden light appeared, as dazzling as the sun. Swoosh! It was a sacred and mighty giant golden sword. It fell like a meteor and slammed towards Empress Tantai. At this moment, it was as if there were two suns in the sky. The dazzling golden light shrouded the entire red sun imperial city, and no one could open their eyes. Kaboom! The giant golden sword, which was thousands of feet tall, slammed into the seven-colored light shield with a divine power that could pierce through everything and exploded with a loud bang. The seven-colored light shield was pierced through by the giant sword, and a huge hole appeared. Then, the giant golden sword slammed into Empress Tantai, and her figure was submerged. Kacha-kacha! A series of clear and melodious sounds of explosion rang out as the seven-colored light barrier within a radius of 3,000 meters collapsed, bursting out with dazzling fragments that blotted out the sky and covered the earth. Chapter 2134. Bang! The destructive golden light shockwave spread out in all directions and engulfed the entire palace. Thousands of houses and palaces were destroyed into smithereens by the golden light, raising a cloud of dust. For a moment, the entire Scarlet Sun Imperial City shook violently as if a super earthquake had happened. It was unknown how many houses and buildings had collapsed in this disaster. Many people were injured or killed because of this. After a long while, the dust that covered the sky gradually dissipated. The Scarlet Sun Imperial City that was shaking non-stop also gradually returned to its peaceful state. Countless soldiers, guards, and civilians all rushed out of their houses and looked in the direction of the Imperial Palace. Everyone's face was filled with shock and confusion, not knowing what had happened. Tens of thousands of Imperial Guards, under the lead of dozens of Imperial Guards commanders, rushed to the Phoenix Perching Palace. However, when they arrived at the scene, they found that the Phoenix Palace had disappeared and only ruins were left. There was a handsome young man in a white robe standing in the sky with an indifferent expression. His expression was emotionless as he looked down at the ruins calmly. Many of the Imperial Guards looked at his feet and saw a huge crater. At the bottom of the deep pit, a woman covered in blood and dust slowly flew out. She looked very pathetic and her long dress was already in tatters, vaguely revealing a few patches of her snow-white skin. Her delicate and beautiful face was also covered in dirt and blood, making it almost impossible to see her face clearly. However, she did not care about her serious injuries or her pathetic appearance. She staggered up into the air, staring at Ji Tianxing with a venomous look in her eyes, and growled with a hoarse voice, "Bastard! You heartless, and merciless bastard! I hate you! I will hate you for the rest of my life and I will never forgive you." Ji Tianxing looked at her calmly and was silent for a moment before he said, "After this, I hope you can wake up completely and stop being so stubborn. You are already the Empress of the Scarlet Sun Empire. Since you have chosen the Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor, you should support him wholeheartedly. Don't cause any more trouble and don't have any unrealistic thoughts. Today I can spare your life, but this is the last time. If you continue to pester me, don't blame me for being ruthless and taking your life." Hearing his words, the Imperial Guards who came from all directions dispelled their doubts and confirmed Empress Tantai's identity. Instantly, countless Imperial Guards pulled out their swords and sabers and looked at Ji Tianxing with hostility. "How dare you attack our Empress? Men, take this arrogant bastard down. How dare you offend Celestial Empress? You should die 10,000 times for your crimes." Dozens of Imperial Guard commanders shouted with righteous indignation. They could not wait to attack Ji Tianxing with their swords. Ji Tianxing ignored these Imperial Army soldiers, not even bothering to glance at them. Empress Tantai raised her sleeve to wipe off the blood on her face. She looked at him with a sad face and sneered crazily. "Ha! How vicious and merciless! You want to take my life? You are indeed ruthless and heartless. Since you hate me so much, you can kill me now." After saying that, she opened her arms and flew toward Ji Tianxing without any defense. She looked as though she was ready to die. The surrounding Imperial Army marshals were all startled by this sight and hurriedly rushed over to stop and rescue him. "Empress, come back quickly. Don't panic, Empress. We are here to save you." Several Imperial Guard commanders flew toward Empress Tantai and tried to pull her back. The remaining 30 Imperial Guard commanders waved their swords and sabers at Ji Tianxing, besieging him. Ji Tianxing turned his head and glanced at the commanders expressionlessly. He waved his sleeve as though he was swatting flies. Swoosh! A dazzling golden light swept over and struck the 30-some Imperial Army marshals. With a muffled explosion, all of them were thrown back and fell into the ruins with blood spurting out of their mouths. At the same time, the other Imperial Guard commanders rushed to Empress Tantai's side and tried to stop her. Empress Tantai did not appreciate their kindness. She waved her palms and sent the Imperial Guard commanders flying. "Get lost." Ji Tianxing stared at her and said coldly, "Tantai Xian, do you really think I am a merciful person and will not kill you?" Empress Tantai seemed to have gone mad. She laughed contemptuously and said, "Ha! For you. You are the sword god whose name shakes the world. Who do you not dare to kill? Not only have you killed millions of enemies, but you have also killed the woman who was infatuated with you. How heroic you are." Ji Tianxing frowned and said with a cold expression, "Since you're so stubborn, I'll fulfill your wish." As he said that, a black light shone in his right hand and the sword of burial of heaven appeared. He held the sword of burial of heaven and placed it on Empress Tantai's neck. As long as he waved the sword in his hand, Empress Tantai's head would fall to the ground. Empress Tantai stared at him and sneered, "Why are you still hesitating? Do it. Do you still want me to help you?" As she said that, she held the sword of burial of heaven and placed the tip of the sword on her forehead. "Come on. Pierce my forehead with your sword and shatter my soul along the way. Only then will I die completely. That's good. I'm completely awake now, and I won't bother you anymore. Empress Tantai said coldly and resolutely. The Imperial Guard commanders were all frightened. They broke out in cold sweat and their hearts were in their throats. The dozens of Imperial Guard commanders all ignored their own injuries and roared hysterically. Bastard, put down the sword. That is our Empress. If you dare to kill our Empress, our Red Sun Empire will not rest until you are dead. Boy, are you not afraid of Holy Emperor Red Sun's revenge? These Imperial Guard commanders could not stop Ji Tianxing, so they could only use Holy Emperor Red Sun to intimidate him. But it was useless. Ji Tianxing ignored the Imperial Guards and looked deeply at Empress Tantai, who was close at hand, and said in a deep voice, Tantai Xian, why are you so stubborn and unrepentant? Only by killing you can I put an end to... Before he could finish his sentence, a thunderous roar suddenly came from the sky above the imperial city not far away. This was a middle-aged man's angry roar. It was like a thunderbolt that shook half of the imperial city. Everyone turned their heads in unison and saw a wisp of fiery light speeding towards them. In just 2 breaths, the ray of fire flew from 100 miles away and landed beside Ji Tianxing and Empress Tantai. Swoosh! The dark red flames faded away, revealing an old man with a medium build and white hair. Chapter 2135. Without a doubt, he was the Saint Emperor of the Scarlet Sun Empire. The tens of thousands of Imperial Guards around the ruins fell to their knees and kowtowed respectfully. Greetings, Your Majesty! The tens of thousands of people shouted in unison. The sound waves were like a flood, deafening to the ears. However, Saint Emperor Scarlet Sun ignored the Imperial Guards and stared at Ji Tianxing fiercely. He shouted, How dare you assassinate my Empress? Why aren't you surrendering? Ji Tianxing kept the Sword of Burial of Heaven and looked at Saint Emperor Scarlet Sun expressionlessly. Saint Emperor Scarlet Sun's appearance was similar to a man in his 50s. His skin was old and loose, and his hair was half black and half white. He looked very old. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing couldn't help but frown. He thought to himself, strange, Saint Emperor Scarlet Sun didn't exist 1,000 years ago. He must have broken through to the martial saint realm less than 1,000 years ago. A martial saint less than 1,000 years old should be very young. How can he be so old? Even his strength is only at the 6th level martial saint realm. He's not even comparable to Tantai Xian. Could it be that Tantai Xian has absorbed his strength and essence? That's why he's so old and weak? At this time, Saint Emperor Scarlet Sun saw Ji Tianxing keeping the sword and heaved a sigh of relief. He quickly flew to Tantai Xian's side and hugged her in his arms. He asked with concern, Lin Xian, how are you? Are your injuries serious? Who is this bastard? Why did he try to assassinate you? Empress Tantai glanced at Saint Emperor Scarlet Sun expressionlessly and struggled to break free from his embrace. She said coldly, I'm fine. Saint Emperor Scarlet Sun didn't feel awkward and doted on Empress Tantai. He said in a dignified tone, Xian, don't worry. This bastard dares to assassinate you. I won't let him off easily. No matter who he is, I'll make him pay the price. Empress Tantai glanced at him contemptuously and sneered, You said it yourself, don't go back on your words later. The Scarlet Sun Holy Emperor still didn't know. He nodded solemnly and said, I'm a man of my words. How could I lie to you? Empress Tantai sneered again and asked in a deep voice, Have you never lied to me? How do you explain the God-binding rope? Red Sun Holy Emperor was stunned. He asked, What's wrong with the God-binding rope? Empress Tantai said coldly, The God-binding rope you gave me is just a fake made from the tendons of a flood dragon. The Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor was at a loss for words. He had an awkward smile on his face as he explained, Lin Xian, don't be angry. The real God-binding rope is a divine weapon. Where would this emperor find it? Empress Tantai sneered, pointed at Ji Tianxing and said, All right, let's not talk about the God-binding rope for now. Now, it's time for you to fulfill your promise and kill him. The Scarlet Sun Holy Emperor nodded without hesitation and said, "All right, Xian, you retreat and heal your injuries first. After this emperor kills this madman, I'll come and heal you." After saying that, a golden light flashed in his right hand and a golden dragon-shaped sword appeared. He held the sword in his left hand and the golden sword in his right hand. He looked at Ji Tianxing with murderous intent. Empress Tantai took 2 steps back and looked at the Scarlet Sun Holy Emperor with a sneer. Her eyes were full of contempt and ridicule. The Scarlet Sun Holy Emperor glared at Ji Tianxing and shouted, "Brat, who are you? Why did you sneak into the palace and assassinate this emperor's empress?" Ji Tianxing looked at him coldly and said disdainfully, "Qi Yang, it seems like you've been bewitched by Tantai Xian. You've lost your mind and become obsessed with her." The Scarlet Sun Holy Emperor was stunned and asked subconsciously, "Who is Tantai Xian?" Ji Tianxing pointed at Empress Tantai behind him and said in a dignified tone, "Her real name is Tantai Xian. Her real identity is the Empress of the Cha Nu tribe." "This emperor's empress?" The Scarlet Sun Holy Emperor glanced at Empress Tantai and then looked at Ji Tianxing in confusion. "Cha Nu tribe? Empress? Brat, what nonsense are you talking about? Everyone in this country knows that this is this emperor's empress, the devastatingly beautiful Princess Lin Xian." "Haha." Ji Tianxing sneered disdainfully and shook his head. "Scarlet Sun, it seems that not only do you not know about the Cha Nu tribe, but you are also kept in the dark by her. The Cha Nu tribe's reputation is known by all the veteran experts in the continent. Tantai Xian, as the empress of the Cha Nu tribe, is a demoness who can bring disaster to a country. If this emperor knew that you are so stupid, this emperor would not have come to the Scarlet Sun Empire to help, let alone care about your life and death." The Scarlet Sun Holy Emperor was completely dumbfounded and his face and eyes were filled with confusion and confusion. He turned his head to look at Empress Tantai, who was smiling coldly, and then looked at Ji Tianxing, who was wearing a cold expression. After a long silence, his anger dissipated and he looked at Empress Tantai in confusion and asked, "Lin Xian, is what he said true? This emperor believes you, he must be slandering you, right?" Empress Tantai ignored him and looked at Ji Tianxing with scorching eyes and sneered, "Did you see that? You abandoned me like a worn-out shoe, but someone else treats me like a treasure. Even if he knew that he was fooled by me, he still loved me for hundreds of years and obeyed me." Ji Tianxing said expressionlessly, "Only this kind of brainless worm would be captivated by you." No matter how stupid the Scarlet Sun Holy Emperor was, no matter how fooled he was by Empress Tantai, he could still hear the clues at this moment. He stared at Empress Tantai in disbelief and asked in a deep voice, "Lin Xian, could it be that what he said was true? Are you really the Empress of the Cha Nu tribe?" Empress Tantai looked at him contemptuously and sneered, "So what if I am? Didn't you willingly become a subject under my skirt and be ordered around by me? For hundreds of years, you were intoxicated by the pleasure I brought to you. You would rather not make any progress in your cultivation than be absorbed by me. This is all voluntary. Are you going to go back on your words now?" The Scarlet Sun Holy Emperor shook his head subconsciously and quickly said, "No, you are this emperor's empress. No matter what your past is, this emperor can let bygones be bygones." Empress Tantai suddenly smiled brightly and pointed at Ji Tianxing, "Then what are you still in a daze for? Why aren't you killing him?" The Scarlet Sun Holy Emperor looked at Ji Tianxing and recalled what he said before. He felt that something was wrong and asked doubtfully, "Your Excellency said that you are here to help the Scarlet Sun Empire in battle? May I ask who your Excellency is?" Ji Tianxing said indifferently, "Ji Tianxing." These 3 short words were like a bolt from the blue, making the Scarlet Sun Holy Emperor feel as if he was struck by lightning. He was stunned on the spot. After a long while, he finally came back to his senses. He stared at Ji Tianxing, dumbfounded, and his expression became extremely complicated. You are actually the first disciple of Luotian Mountain?" Chapter 2136. Ji Tianxing's name and deeds had long spread throughout the Luoshui kingdom. However, the Scarlet Sun Holy Emperor was the same as the commoners. He had only heard of Ji Tianxing's name and had never seen him in person. Therefore, when he found out that the white-robed young man in front of him was the famous Ji Tianxing, his state of mind was in a mess. How can this be? How can this be? How can you be Ji Tianxing? Holy Emperor Qiang murmured in despair. He was at a loss and did not know what to do. Ji Tianxing was the #1 god's disciple in the Luoshui kingdom. He was the most valued person by the Divine Master and also the #1 genius in the continent. Most importantly, he had killed 2 great demon sages and annihilated millions of demon soldiers. In the northern battlefield, he was invincible and undefeatable. In just 3 months, he had helped the White Frost Empire and Changlong Empire out of the siege and defeated millions of demon soldiers. The Qiang Empire had been waiting for him for a long time and finally, he was here. Soon, the Qiang Empire would be saved and the demon soldiers would be defeated. Holy Emperor Qiang had thought more than once about how to arrange a ceremony to welcome their savior, Ji Tianxing, with the most enthusiastic and grand ceremony. However, he did not expect that his first meeting with Ji Tianxing would be under such circumstances. This was too King embarrassing. Was there a more ridiculous situation than this? For a moment, Saint Emperor Scarlet's Sun fell into a dilemma. Empress Tantai had already expected his reaction and sneered contemptuously. Qiang, you have really insulted your name. You are so wishy-washy like a woman. What's wrong? Have you been squatting under my skirt for too long and can't straighten your back? Have you forgotten what you said just now? Are you going to break your promise in front of everyone? You untrustworthy, lustful, cowardly coward. Empress Tantai scolded Holy Emperor Qiang without any scruples. This made the tens of thousands of imperial guards feel embarrassed. Only then did everyone understand that the handsome and valiant white-robed youth was the legendary Marshal Ji. Filled with shame, they hurriedly put away their swords and weapons and quietly retreated to a distance. The situation now was really like a fight between gods. As mortals, they were not qualified to intervene. Holy Emperor Qiang hesitated for a moment before gritting his teeth and making up his mind. He bowed to Ji Tianxing and said respectfully, "General Ji, I have heard of your name for a long time. I have been looking for an opportunity to thank you face to face to face to face. It's a pity that the situation at the border is tense and I haven't had the time to pay you a visit. This is my negligence and I hope you can forgive me. When I came here just now, I didn't recognize your face and I was worried about my wife's safety. That's why I misunderstood and spoke rudely to you. I didn't mean to offend you, and I apologize to you with my humble servant. I hope that you can be magnanimous and forgive me." After saying that, he gave Empress Tantai a meaningful glance, wanting to drag her along to apologize to Ji Tianxing. Unfortunately, Emperor Qiang's eyes. "Qiang, I have overestimated you. I didn't expect you to be so cowardly. You only know that he is Ji Tianxing and you are so humble to him. You even want me to apologize to him. What a joke. If you knew his other identity, you would probably kneel down and wipe his shoes, right?" Emperor Qiang Empire laughed crazily. Her words were merciless and humiliated Holy Emperor Qiang. No matter how much Holy Emperor Qiang doted on her and tolerated her, he could not accept such humiliation. Moreover, it was in front of tens of thousands of imperial guards and citizens. "Shut up." Holy Emperor Qiang Empire was enraged. He glared at Emperor Qiang Empire and shouted, "Lin Xian, don't you think you have caused enough trouble for me? I order you to apologize to young Master Ji immediately." How could Emperor Qiang Empire submit? She had completely given up. She looked at Holy Emperor Qiang Empire with resentment and sneered, "Haha, Ji Tianxing wanted to kill me and now you want me to apologize to him? Qiang, you are just afraid of his power and status. You are afraid of offending the Divine Lord and losing your position as Holy Emperor. You said that you are infatuated with me and are willing to do anything for me. How laughable that I actually believed you. In fact, you are the same as all the other men in the world. You are all selfish bastards. Compared to Ji Tianxing, you are filthy and despicable and contemptible. Compared to Kenshin, You are more like a maggot in a smelly ditch. Disgusting. I was really blind. Why did I marry you back then? I even slept with you for hundreds of years? I was so stupid. I was so blind. Emperor Qiang Empire opened her arms and looked up at the sky. Her voice was hoarse as she screamed crazily. Her whole body twitched in pain. After closing her eyes, 2 lines of blood flowed out from the corners of her eyes. Ji Tianxing looked at all this indifferently. There was no longer any ripples in his heart. Although this matter was already lamentable, he had already given up. He was no longer willing to sympathize with her. Holy Emperor Qiang Empire was originally infatuated. Even if he knew that Empress Tantai was the empress of the Cha-Nu tribe, he would not mind. He wanted to keep his position as Holy Emperor but did not want to give up on Empress Tantai. That was why he persuaded Empress Tantai to apologize to Ji Tianxing. But he never thought that things would develop to this point. Empress Tantai said such vicious words in her grief and indignation. But they were all from the bottom of her heart. Only then did he understand that in Empress Tantai's heart, he was so filthy, inferior, and despicable. I am the dignified Holy Emperor Qiang Empire, but she humiliated me in front of the people of the imperial city. It's all because I was too soft-hearted and too arrogant to her. I actually let her become so crazy. If I don't kill her today, I will lose all my face and become the laughingstock of the empire. How can I rule the empire in the future? What's more, Ji Tianxing was there. If I don't deal with it properly, I will offend him. Holy Emperor Qiang Empire was angry and humiliated. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. His eyes were stained with a layer of blood. He cupped his fist at Ji Tianxing and said in a sonorous tone, I've made a fool of myself in front of you. I was fooled by this demoness and almost became a fatuous ruler. Fortunately, Ji Tianxing came out today and exposed the true face of this demoness. Only then did I wake up. Let me deal with my family affairs first and kill this demoness. Then I will thank Ji Tianxing. After that, he held the golden sword with both hands and unleashed all his power. He slashed at Empress Tantai. Swoosh! The golden light formed a giant sword that was thousands of feet long. It carried the power to split heaven and earth and fell on Empress Tantai's head. Holy Emperor Qiang Empire's strength was weaker than Empress Tantai. But Empress Tantai was seriously injured and was at the end of her rope. Chapter 2137. Empress Tantai's figure was drowned by the sword light. In the next moment, she was going to be killed by Saint Emperor Qiang on the spot. At this moment, Ji Tianxing suddenly shouted coldly, "Stop!" By the time his voice sounded, Saint Emperor Qiang's sword had already reached Empress Tantai's head. How could he stop it? Ji Tianxing's figure flashed and teleported to Empress Tantai's side. His right hand lit up with a dazzling golden light as he grabbed at the top of her head. Boom! A huge golden hand instantly grabbed the giant sword that was thousands of feet long, and there was a muffled sound. The giant sword, which was originally incomparably violent, suddenly stopped after it was caught by the giant golden palm. It did not move an inch. Saint Emperor Qiang was stunned. His eyes widened in disbelief as he looked at Ji Tianxing in horror. He never thought that Ji Tianxing would actually stop him from killing Tantai Xian. Moreover, he did not expect Ji Tianxing to be able to block his all-out attack with just one hand. This was simply too terrifying. At this moment, he finally understood what level Ji Tianxing's strength had reached. The tens of thousands of imperial guards and the citizens of the imperial city in the distance were all dumbfounded. Their faces were filled with astonishment. In the past, everyone had only heard that Marshal Ji was invincible and his strength was unfathomable. But that was just a legend. No one had seen it with their own eyes. Today, they finally saw it with their own eyes. It was indeed terrifying. At this moment, Ji Tianxing's right hand gradually closed, and the golden hand also clenched tightly. Kacha-kacha, sounds of shattering were heard. The 3,000-meter-long giant sword was shattered on the spot. Saint Emperor Qiang withdrew his sword with a complicated expression. He looked at Ji Tianxing in confusion and asked, "Marshal Ji?" Ji Tianxing glanced at him calmly and said indifferently, "Forget it. She has lost her mind. She is also a pitiful person. Let her go." Tantai Xian was also stunned. She looked at Ji Tianxing's side face with a complicated expression. After a long while, she came back to her senses and sneered with a bitter expression, I don't need your sympathy." Ji Tianxing didn't reply. He looked at her calmly and said, "Tantai Xian, leave and never come back. Find a place to live in seclusion and focus on pursuing the peak of martial arts." Empress Tantai looked at him deeply and said in a low voice, "Kenshin, today's matter, I will remember it. Let's meet again in the martial world." With that, she turned around and flew into the sky, turning into a ray of golden light and disappearing into the horizon. On the ruins of the imperial palace, nearly 10,000 people looked up at the sky and discussed with complicated expressions. After a long time, the Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor regained his composure and spoke in a dignified tone. The queen of the Chanu race, Tantai Xian, impersonated the princess of the flower race, Lin Xian, and infiltrated the imperial court. For nearly 300 years, this emperor has been bewitched by Tantai Xian, but I still followed my heart and didn't cause a disaster. Fortunately, young Master Ji Tianxing came today and saw through the demonic woman's identity. Only then did he save this emperor and prevent this emperor's reputation from being damaged. And because of young Master Ji's benevolence, I spared the witch's life and this matter is over. From now on, no one is allowed to talk about this matter. Otherwise, they will be punished severely. The Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor's voice was like rolling thunder, spreading across half of the imperial city. Countless imperial guards and commoners heard this and hurriedly bowed to show that they had obeyed. The Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor ordered with a dignified expression, "All imperial guards, listen to my order. Immediately rescue the injured and repair the palace and houses." Tens of thousands of imperial guards accepted the order and quickly scattered to carry out the task. The Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor flew to Ji Tianxing and bowed to him with a smile. "General Ji, thank you very much for today's matter. This emperor will order the Internal Affairs Department to arrange a banquet and let this emperor entertain you well to express my gratitude. General Ji, please follow this emperor to the guest hall. Let's rest first." Ji Tianxing did not have a good impression of the Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor. He glanced at him expressionlessly and said indifferently, "No need. I am busy with military affairs and have to rush back to the Starfall Valley." The Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor frowned slightly and tried to persuade him a few more times. But Ji Tianxing insisted and did not want to stay. The Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor could only give up and personally send him out of the imperial city. Along the way, he tried to find something to talk about and asked Ji Tianxing, "General Ji, this emperor heard that you are in the Starfall Valley. Why did you come to the imperial city?" Of course, Ji Tianxing could not tell him the truth. So, he made up a lie. This emperor came to the Scarlet Sun Empire not only for the war, but also to investigate the queen of the Chanu tribe. I see. The Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor nodded to show that he understood. He was secretly alarmed. Oh no! Ji Tianxing came with bad intentions. He must have been ordered by the Divine Master. Could it be that the Divine Master already knew that this emperor's empress is the queen of the Chanu tribe? If that's the case, wouldn't this emperor's image in the Divine Master's heart be greatly reduced? Wouldn't I become a useless and lecherous ruler? The moment he thought of this, the Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor's heart was filled with worry. When Ji Tianxing saw the strange expression on his face, he asked, "Oh right, Scarlet Sun, aren't you in the Heavenly Wolf Pass? Why did you come back to the Imperial City?" The Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor was stunned and thought to himself, "Damn it, this emperor already guessed that he would ask this question. But how can this emperor tell him that this emperor is looking for Lin Xian? It's just a coincidence that this emperor encountered this matter." He quickly came up with an idea and lied. This emperor has already arranged the military affairs in the Heavenly Wolf Pass and has to return to the Imperial Palace to deal with the government affairs. I didn't expect to encounter this matter. Ji Tianxing looked at him with a smile that was not a smile and said, "Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor is really busy." The Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor hurriedly waved his hands and said humbly, "Young Master Ji is too kind. As the ruler of a country, this emperor naturally has to work hard for the millions of citizens. This is this emperor's responsibility." Ji Tianxing didn't believe this nonsense at all and said calmly, "All right, you can send me off here. I will take my leave now. If there's anything important, I will contact you again." In other words, if there wasn't anything important, don't bother me. The Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor also heard the signs and asked anxiously, "Marshal Ji, please wait. May I ask if Marshal Ji will come to the Heavenly Wolf Pass to assist this emperor after the crisis in the Starfall Valley is resolved?" Ji Tianxing thought for a moment and waved his hand, "Maybe there isn't a need. When the time comes, just wait for my message." The Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor frowned and mumbled, "What do you mean?" Ji Tianxing didn't explain and cupped his hands to the Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor before flying away. The Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor stood in the air and looked at Jiang Yi's departing figure with a complicated expression. Only when Ji Tianxing's figure disappeared into the horizon did the Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor heave a sigh of relief. He muttered to himself, "Damn it. Is this fellow a jinx?" Chapter 2138. When Ji Tianxing returned to Meteor Fall Valley, it was already evening. At this time, the 6 generals had long brought an army of over 500,000 and returned in triumph. Inside Meteor Fall Valley, the atmosphere was jubilant. Before Ji Tianxing set off for battle, no one knew where he was going to attack. Only now did everyone know that he brought an army of 600,000 to attack Fish Dragon Mountain's main camp. The most inconceivable thing was that he actually succeeded. Not only did he destroy Fish Dragon Mountain's main camp, he even killed over 1 million fiends and even killed Commander-in-Chief Zhang Yu. This was absolutely a great piece of news, a great victory that raised everyone's spirits. Everyone understood that the destruction of Fish Dragon Mountain's main camp would definitely cause a tremendous blow to the Fiend army's morale. Fiend Sage Zhang Yu being killed also made the Fiend army leaderless and would definitely fall into panic. The Crimson Sun Empire was not far from victory. Before long, the Empire's army would be able to expel several million fiends and return home. That night, a grand celebratory banquet was held inside Meteor Fall Valley. Bonfires burned brightly everywhere, the fragrance of wine overflowing everywhere. The soldiers sang and danced, drinking to their heart's content all night. Especially those 6 generals who took part in the battle, they became the entire Meteor Fall Valley's focal point, receiving the reverence and envy of the million soldiers. But those 6 generals did not dare to claim credit. They all appeared very humble, pushing all of the credit to Ji Tianxing. No matter what occasion, they all spoke bluntly. The greatest contributor to this great victory was Commander-in-Chief Ji Tianxing. Without Marshal Ji's leadership, they absolutely could not have won, let alone create such glorious battle results. The soldiers were jubilant, but Ji Tianxing did not show up. He stayed alone in his residence in the Commander-in-Chief Palace, meditating and cultivating in a secret chamber. Whatever celebratory banquet, award ceremony, he was not interested in it. What he was thinking about was not just Meteor Fall Valley and the Crimson Sun Empire, it even included half the continent. The ancestral fiend god had the intention of withdrawing long ago. Now that Zhang Yu is dead, the fiend army in the northern border is constantly decreasing. I reckon that they will withdraw soon. After the fiend race's chaos is resolved, I have to make a trip back to Luotian Mountain first and report to Granny Long. In addition, I have to take a look at Yao Yao's cultivation situation and the 2 children. He wondered if Yao Yao had refined the god orb, and what realm had she reached. Now that the matters of the Luotian Mountain are settled, I will return to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. Now that I have returned to the Martial Sage realm, I can finally stand at the top of the mainland and rebuild the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. After making up his mind, he focused on cultivating and consolidating his martial arts foundation. Unknowingly, a day and night had passed. It was the night of the 2nd day. The grand celebration banquet had long since ended, and the Starfall Valley had also regained its tranquility. Ji Tianxing was cultivating in the secret chamber when the voice of a young man suddenly rang out from outside the door. Reporting to Marshal Ji, Marshal Du just sent a message to invite you to the conference hall to discuss important military matters. When Ji Tianxing heard this, he ended his cultivation and walked out of the secret chamber. Outside the secret room stood a young man in armor, dressed like a guard. Ji Tianxing sized him up and asked, "Who are you?" The young man hurriedly bowed and answered truthfully, reporting to Marshal Ji, "This subordinate is a bodyguard sent by Marshal Du to serve you." Ji Tianxing frowned and asked again, "Where is Guanji?" The young guard hesitated for a moment before explaining with a difficult expression, reporting to Marshal Ji, "This subordinate does not know where Miss Guanji went. However, this subordinate heard that after you led the army to battle, Miss Guanji disappeared." Hearing him say this, Ji Tianxing understood what was going on and thought to himself, "Guanji must have followed Tantai Xian'er's orders to deliberately approach me to gather information. When I led the army to battle, her mission was completed and she most likely went to find Tantai Xian'er." He threw this matter to the back of his mind and strode through the corridor, heading towards the conference hall in the front hall. After 100 breaths of time, he stepped into the conference hall. The conference hall was brightly lit and there were more than 20 generals waiting in 2 groups. Marshal Du Chengchang stood near the sand table and stared at it, lost in thought. Seeing Ji Tianxing enter the conference hall, all the generals saluted and said respectfully, "This general greets Marshal Ji." Du Chengchang also cupped his fists and greeted him with a smile. "Marshal Ji, you've finally come. Everyone has been waiting for you." Ji Tianxing glanced at him and asked calmly, "What is it?" Du Chengchang did not beat around the bush and said bluntly, "Marshal Ji, you led an army of 600,000 and smoothly flattened the Fish Dragon Mountain camp and killed Demon Sage Songyu. This great victory has raised our army's morale and our fighting spirit. On the other hand, the demon race army must be in a panic and at a loss. This is the best opportunity for us to pursue them. We should set out as soon as possible and take down the other 2 camps in one fell swoop." After annihilating the demon race army outside Falling Star Valley, we can rush to Heavenly Wolf Pass's aid. Du Chengchang was excited, his face flushed red and his bright eyes filled with expectation. The 20-some generals in the conference hall also echoed his words. "That's right, Marshal Du's words are reasonable. Marshal Ji, you can't hesitate. We must pursue them while they're victorious. Marshal Ji commands troops like a god. How can you not understand these principles? Everyone, don't worry. Marshal Ji will definitely lead the charge and utterly defeat the demon race army." Ji Tianxing saw that everyone was eager for battle and did not stop them. He nodded and said, "Since you all want to set out, then prepare the army for battle. In any case, the demon race army will be retreating soon. If you don't attack now, you won't have the chance to perform any meritorious service." Hearing this, all the generals were taken aback for a moment, all of them revealing looks of confusion. "What? The demon race army will be retreating soon? Marshal Ji, where did you get this news? Is it reliable?" "If that's really the case, then that's great. The demon race army is finally retreating. The soldiers can finally return to their homes. If the demon race army retreats, that's naturally for the best. The soldiers under this seat's command won't have to fight bloody battles and get injured or die. Obviously, not everyone was bloodthirsty and warlike. The reason why they led the army to battle was to protect their home and defend their country. They were forced to resist. Thus, the 20-some generals were immediately divided into 2 factions. One faction advocated setting out and only wanted to kill the demon race army, perform meritorious service, and make a name for themselves. The other faction advocated defending Starfall Valley and waiting for the demon race army to retreat so that they could return to their homes. Seeing this scene, Du Chengchang couldn't help but frown. He looked at Ji Tianxing with a solemn expression. "Marshal Ji, is what you said just now true? Is the demon race army really going to retreat?" Ji Tianxing said with an indifferent expression, "That's natural. However, we must put pressure on the demon race to urge them to retreat as soon as possible. Ben Shuai will personally lead the army into battle." Generals who want to perform meritorious service can take the initiative to apply. Chapter 2139. Ji Tianxing's decision was undoubtedly the best choice. The 20 or so generals all showed relieved smiles. The generals who were willing to participate in the war enthusiastically reported their names, intending to follow Ji Tianxing into battle. The generals who were not willing to fight stayed in Fallen Star Valley and waited for the war to end before returning home. After a while, this matter was settled. 12 generals were willing to go into battle, while the other 14 chose to stay in Fallen Star Valley. Ji Tianxing ordered the 12 generals to go back and prepare, waiting for his orders at any time. The other 14 generals also took their leave one after another. Only Ji Tianxing and Du Qingchang were left in the Great Hall. Du Qingchang said with a smile, "Marshal Ji really is a natural-born war god. Your grasp of the situation and the morale of the army is exquisite." He cupped his fists and bowed to Ji Tianxing, sincerely flattering him. Ji Tianxing did not appreciate it and looked at him indifferently, asking in a deep voice, "Du Qingchang, you deliberately arranged for Guanji to stay by Benshuai's side, didn't you?" Du Qingchang's face suddenly stiffened and he put on a slightly embarrassed smile. "Marshal Ji, what do you mean? Did Guanji offend you? Or did Guanji's sudden disappearance make you unhappy?" Ji Tianxing frowned and said with a dignified expression, "A straightforward person does not speak insinuations. You should know what happened in Qiyang Imperial City." Du Qingchang quickly put on a smiling face and showed an expression of sudden realization. "Oh, so you are unhappy because of this." A few days ago, this old man and the imperial family knew that Marshal Ji was coming to help. This old man was busy preparing the welcoming ceremony when Miss Guanji came to Fallen Star Valley and brought a letter from Her Majesty the Empress. Her Majesty the Empress ordered that Marshal Ji come from afar to help resolve the crisis of the demon race. He is a great guest. Miss Guanji is her personal maid and is the most trusted one. She is also the best at serving people. Therefore, Her Majesty the Empress wants Miss Guanji to serve you personally and not neglect you. How could this old man dare to disobey Her Majesty the Empress? Naturally, I'll do as you say. Speaking up to this point, Du Qingchang stroked his white beard and sighed with compassion. Who would have thought that the gentle and virtuous celestial empress would actually be a demoness that could bring disaster to the country and its people? This old man also didn't expect Ji Shuai to personally head to the imperial city and expose Celestial Empress' true colors. Now that he thought about it, that Lady Guanji most likely also had a problem. This old man was momentarily confused and did not investigate Guanji's identity. However, this old man knew nothing about this. "Please forgive me, Marshal Ji." What Du Qingchang said was reasonable, and he pushed the responsibility away, making Ji Tianxing speechless. However, Ji Tianxing always felt that Du Qingchang was too cunning and might not be clean. He stared deeply at Du Qingchang and asked in a deep voice, "Du Qingchang, you are not a general of the Qiyang Empire, but a martial arts master from the underworld. Benshuai will only ask you one thing. Are you loyal to Tantai Xian Heir or Qiyang Holy Emperor?" Du Qingchang also frowned and smiled bitterly. Marshal Ji's words are difficult to understand. The master of Qiyang Empire is His Majesty the Holy Emperor, and this old man is a citizen of Qiyang Empire, so of course I am loyal to His Majesty. Ji Tianxing glanced at him and said indifferently, "This matter is over, you take care of yourself. Early tomorrow morning, Benshuai will lead the army to battle. You guard Falling Star Valley well." Du Qingchang cupped his hands with a smile and said confidently, "Please rest assured, Marshal Ji. With this old man overseeing Falling Star Valley, nothing will go wrong." Early the next morning, Ji Tianxing gathered 500,000 soldiers and set out to attack a demon race fortress. The fortress had more than 600,000 soldiers stationed there. The terrain was steep and there were many defensive spirit arrays arranged around it, making it easy to defend and difficult to attack. Moreover, the fortress stored a large number of cultivation resources and war preparations. After Ji Tianxing led the army to the fortress, he did not need any planning or strategy. He just charged straight in. In any case, he took the lead and no one could stop him. Regardless of whether it was the layers of defensive spirit arrays or the tens of thousands of demon race guards, they were all like paper in front of him. All the obstacles blocking his advance were easily swept away by him. With the 500,000 soldiers following him, he only needed to clean up the mess. It could be said that it was very easy. This battle only lasted for 4 hours before it was declared over. More than 90% of the 600,000 demon race soldiers were wiped out. Only 10,000 managed to escape. The human soldiers destroyed the fortress and seized a large number of war preparations. Unfortunately, most of the cultivation resources were for the demon race's use. The human race could not use them. Ji Tianxing ordered the soldiers to destroy those resources on the spot. After this battle ended, the army returned to Falling Star Valley to rest and reorganize. However, Ji Tianxing did not rest. He led 700,000 soldiers and attacked another demon race camp that night. In any case, there were 12 generals following him. There were 1,200,000 soldiers at his disposal. That night, the night sky in the north of Falling Star Valley was brightly lit all night, surrounded by soaring flames. The commotion of the great battle spread thousands of miles away. The starlight, heavenly wind, and astral fire that fell from the sky could be clearly seen even 10,000 miles away. After daybreak, the human soldiers returned in triumph. Of the 700,000 soldiers, there were still 600,000 left. 100,000 soldiers had died on the battlefield. But the demon race camp was trampled flat. The million demon race army was turned to ashes, vanishing into thin air. After 2 consecutive battles, the soldiers under Ji Tianxing's command were already physically and mentally exhausted. They had to rest for a few days. And the demon race army outside Falling Star Valley only had a few 100,000 people left. They were trapped in a camp. Those remaining demon race had already completely lost their fighting spirit. They were in a constant state of panic, waiting for death to descend. Whatever army morale, it all collapsed and disintegrated. Ji Tianxing had been meditating in the Valley of Fallen Stars for 3 days. On the morning of the 4th day, he led an army of 500,000 and set off again. This time, he was going to take down the last demon race camp and resolve the danger of Falling Star Valley. However, when he led the army to arrive outside that demon race camp, he discovered that the camp was silent and deserted. He personally entered the demon race camp and discovered that the camp was already deserted. It was like a dead city. The several 100,000 demon race army had already evacuated long ago. The cultivation resources and military supplies in the camp were also all taken away. Only the houses and palaces, as well as the underground demon's den, and the continuously operating Grand Array were left. Regarding this result, Ji Tianxing was not surprised. He ordered the destruction of the entire camp, then led the troops back to Falling Star Valley. After returning to Falling Star Valley, he sent a message to Holy Emperor Crimson Sun, reporting the situation in Falling Star Valley. Not long after the communication jade slip was sent out, a spiritual light flew over from the horizon and landed in Ji Tianxing's palm. After the spiritual light dissipated, a communication jade slip shockingly appeared. Ji Tianxing was stunned for a moment. Frowning, he muttered, "Holy Emperor Crimson Sun replied so quickly? It can't be so fast. It shouldn't be him." Finished talking, his divine sense invaded the jade slip and read the information inside. Chapter 2140. This communication jade slip was indeed not sent by the Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor. It was an urgent message sent by Granny Long from the Luotian Mountain. There was not much information in the jade slip, only a few short sentences. However, to Ji Tianxing, this was incomparably important news. "Tianxing, I already know about your deeds in the northern battlefield. I am deeply gratified and proud. Now that the situation is settled, the war will be over. After you have settled the matters of the Scarlet Sun Empire, return to the Luotian Mountain as soon as possible. I heard that the Heaven and Divine Nation will hold the Divine Martial Sacred Assembly that is held once every 50 years. In this assembly, a divine pearl containing wind and fire appeared. It is most likely related to Yun Yao. The information in the Jade slip ended here. The first few sentences were all about the war in the north. It was not important. The last two sentences were what Ji Tianxing was most concerned about. The divine martial sacred assembly that is held once every 50 years? A divine pearl containing wind and fire? I clearly remember that the heaven and divine nation did not hold such an assembly 1,000 years ago. And that divine pearl containing wind and fire, could it really be related to Yao Yao? This matter was extremely important. He quickly took out the communication jade slip and sent a message to Granny Long, asking about the details. After about a quarter of an hour, Granny Long sent a message back. This time, she explained the matter in detail. The so-called Divine Martial Sacred Assembly is a martial arts assembly that was first held by the Heaven and Divine Nation 1,000 years ago. It is held once every 50 years. So far, the Divine Martial Sacred Assembly has been held 20 times. This year is the 21st. The purpose of the Divine Martial Sacred Assembly is to allow the young martial saints of the continent to gather together and exchange their experiences. Most importantly, everyone can discuss and research together on how to reach the martial god realm and ascend to the upper world. Any martial saint expert, who is under 1,000 years old, regardless of race or force, can participate in the assembly. Other than exchanges and discussions, there are also competitions. The young martial saints who can be ranked in the top 10 will gain both fame and fortune, and become famous in the continent. Every Shenwu's sacred assembly's rewards were extremely generous, so it attracted many young martial saints. After 1,000 years, the Divine Martial Sacred Assembly had become the most powerful and eye-catching martial arts assembly in the continent. According to the reports of the spies in the Heaven and Divine Nation, the rewards of this Divine Martial Sacred Assembly were much more generous and mysterious than the previous ones. Not only were there a few peerless sacred artifacts and magic treasures, but there were also ancient sacred arts manuals. The most mysterious one was the pearl that was taken from the 9 heavens and contained wind and fire. According to the information reported by the spies, I have determined that the pearl is not simple. It is very likely to be the divine pearl that Yun Yao needs. Tianxing, quickly settle the matters of the Scarlet Sun Empire and return to the Luotian Mountain. This old woman will speak with you face to face. The information in the jade strip was very long, but Ji Tianxing patiently read through it. He put away the communication jade slip and pondered with a solemn expression. I see. 1,000 years ago, after I fell, the Heaven and God Nation held this sacred assembly. Not only could it allow martial sages to gather together to discuss the path to becoming a deity and ascension, but it also offered generous rewards. It was no wonder that it was so popular. Now that the wind and fire pearls have appeared, it doesn't matter if it's the god pearl that Yao Yao needs. I have to go there personally. Every divine pearl is related to Yao Yao's life and martial arts future. As long as there is a glimmer of hope, I will not give up. Ji Tianxing made up his mind. He decided to settle the matters of the Scarlet Sun Empire first and then return to the Luotian Mountain. Not long after, another spiritual light flew from the sky and landed in his palm. Swoosh. After the spiritual light faded, a communication jade slip appeared. Ji Tianxing used his divine sense to scan the jade slip and read the message inside. This jade slip was sent by the Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor. Young Master Ji, this emperor has received the message you sent. This morning, the generals under this emperor's command also came to report that the 2 barracks outside the Heavenly Wolf Mountain Pass were also empty. This emperor personally went to the other barracks and strongholds to check on the situation and found that the 4 million demon army had all disappeared. In the depths of the mountains, this emperor captured a small team of demons who were holding the rear. After torture, I found out the truth. As it turns out, the leader of the demons in the North Underworld Mountain issued an order 3 days ago for all the demons to withdraw from the battlefield and return to the North Underworld Mountain as soon as possible. Young Master Ji, this is great news. The demons have finally admitted defeat and retreated. After reading the message in the jade slip, Ji Tianxing silently put away the jade slip and pondered expressionlessly. The voice of the burial of heaven resounded in his mind. The demon army has finally retreated. This war that lasted 3 years has finally ended. Your mission has been completed and you have become a great hero of the Luotian divine nation. Why are you not happy at all? Ji Tianxing's lips curled into a cold smile. He said coldly, "As long as the ancestor fiend god is not dead, I will not be happy. The retreat of the demon army is inevitable. With the current strength of the North Underworld Mountain, it is impossible for them to win against the Luotian divine nation. I think that since we all know that the North Underworld Mountain will lose, the ancestor fiend god must be very clear about this as well. But why did he still insist on starting the war?" The Burial of Heaven was silent for a moment before replying. "You mean to say that the ancestor fiend god starting the war and ordering the demon army to retreat today were all part of his plan? You suspect that this was all part of the ancestor fiend god's scheme from the beginning?" Ji Tianxing nodded and said in a low voice, "That's right. With the ancestor fiend god's nature, he is the coldest and most ruthless fiend god. He is the most selfish. Even if the demons in the North Underworld Mountain are his descendants, he will not have the slightest bit of mercy. What he wants is to sacrifice everyone and use all possible means to help him recover his strength in the shortest time possible. Once he recovers to his peak state, he will become the death god that can move unhindered through the galaxy. Then he can easily enslave the entire world. At that time, he will not be afraid of any gods, nor will he need any citizens or descendants." The Burial of Heaven thought for a moment and immediately understood what he meant. "I understand now. You mean to say that from the beginning, the ancestor fiend god never thought of winning against the Luotian divine nation. What it needed was only war and slaughter. The demon army in the North Underworld Mountain massacred the citizens of the Luotian divine nation and collected an endless amount of blood, qi, and souls to fill the blood sea abyss for the ancestor fiend god. Because of this, the ancestor fiend god was able to recover to the peak of the martial saint realm in just a few years." Ji Tianxing nodded and said in a cold voice, "That's right. The defeat of the demon army is inevitable. But I am more worried that the ancestor fiend god gave the order to retreat because he has already achieved his goal. If that is the case, he will recover to the deity realm soon." The Burial of Heaven was also full of worry and said in a low voice, "If the ancestor fiend god recovers to the deity realm, I am afraid that even the 3 martial gods will not be his match. Before you recover to the deity realm, no one will be able to deal with him. When that happens, he will not need to send out millions of demons." Chapter 2141. Ji Tianxing and Burial of Heaven knew how terrifying the ancestor demon god was. Although 30,000 years had passed since the Great War of the Gods in the Antiquity Age, there were still many legends about it. Through the legends, Ji Tianxing could roughly estimate the ancestor demon god's peak strength. The ancestor demon god's peak strength was comparable to mine. We were both deity kings. I had been reborn for close to 30 years and have just broken through to the martial sage realm. In less than 10 years, it has recovered to the peak of the martial sage realm. Comparisons are odious. Ji Tianxing lamented in a complicated tone as a cold light flashed in his eyes. Burial of Heaven quickly consoled him. "Actually, it has only been 10 years since you awakened. Moreover, the ancestor demon god is an ancient demon god. It constantly caused wars, and wherever it went, it would cause a shocking massacre. It can use the blood qi and souls of billions of living beings to recover its strength quickly. This is the demonic path. You are on the right path and rely on your own cultivation to recover your strength. Of course, you can't compare to it." Ji Tianxing nodded and said earnestly, "Although that is the case, I still feel that time is too tight. I am worried that after a year and a half, I will still be in the martial sage realm while the ancestor demon god will have recovered to the god realm." Burial of Heaven said firmly, "You don't have to worry. No matter how powerful the ancestor demon god is, it can't be that fast. Just by devouring the blood qi and souls of billions of living beings, he wants to recover to the god realm? Is it so easy to reach the god realm?" "I hope so." Ji Tianxing nodded and said no more. At that moment, the young guard's voice sounded from outside the secret chamber. "Reporting to Marshal Ji, Marshal Du has sent someone to invite you to the conference hall to discuss important matters. Hearing the young guard's voice, Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and muttered to himself, "It seems that Du Qingchang should know about the demon race's withdrawal. That's good. I will go and see him now and bid farewell to everyone." With that, he got up and walked out of the secret chamber. Seeing him come out, the young guard hurriedly bowed respectfully and followed him to the conference hall. By the time Ji Tianxing arrived at the meeting hall, Du Qingchang and more than 20 generals were already waiting for him in the hall. Everyone's faces were filled with joy and excitement as they discussed noisily. Obviously, everyone had already heard the news of the devil race's retreat. Seeing Ji Tianxing's arrival, Du Qingchang hurriedly raised his hand to signal for everyone to be quiet. He said in a dignified tone, "General Ji is here. Everyone be quiet." The generals immediately stopped their discussion and quieted down. Everyone's eyes fell on Ji Tianxing as they bowed in unison. "Greetings, Marshal Ji." Ji Tianxing nodded slightly, indicating that everyone was excused. He looked at Du Qingchang and asked, "Marshal Du, did you invite me here for some good news?" Du Qingchang nodded quickly and said with a smile, "Of course." This was great news. Marshal Ji's prediction was indeed like a god. The Devil Race army really retreated. Not only did the Devil Monarch outside Fallen Star Valley retreat, even the several million Devil Race army outside Heavenly Wolf Pass also disappeared without a trace. This war that lasted for 3 years, we finally won. Those hateful Devil Race bastards had no choice but to admit defeat and retreat. Following his words, the other generals also echoed his words. Marshal Ji is really a god in commanding troops. He can foresee the future. Previously, Marshal Ji said that the Devil Race would retreat. The Devil generals didn't believe it, didn't expect that it really came true. Heh, the Devil Race remnants must have been scared out of their wits by Marshal Ji's awe-inspiring reputation. They knew that staying behind was a dead end, so they fled with their tails between their legs. This hard-won victory was not only exchanged with the lives of our tens of millions of soldiers, but it was also single-handedly created by Marshal Ji. This general suggests that we must hold a celebratory feast in Fallen Star Valley to celebrate the victory of this war. All of us should toast Marshal Ji 3 times. Good. This suggestion is good. We all agree. Marshal Ji, please don't decline. All the generals were in an extremely good mood. All of them were in high spirits and immediately began to talk about preparing for the celebratory feast. Ji Tianxing pressed down with both hands, indicating for everyone to quiet down. He cupped his hands towards Du Qingchang and the generals and said in a calm tone, "Marshal Du, generals, this seat thanks everyone for their assistance and help during this period of time in Fallen Star Valley. Now that the Devil Race army has retreated, the war is over. Everyone can enjoy peace and quiet. It's a pity that this seat still has important matters to attend to. I have to rush back to Luotian Mountain as soon as possible and cannot participate in everyone's celebratory feast." Hearing his words, all the generals revealed expressions of regret and pity. They all opened their mouths to urge him to stay. "Marshal Ji, you have saved our Scarlet Sun Empire. You are the greatest contributor. No matter what, please stay for 2 more days and participate in our celebratory feast. Allow all the soldiers to express their gratitude to you." That's right, Marshal Ji. All the soldiers in Fallen Star Valley worship you. They all want to see your true appearance. After the generals finished speaking, Du Qingchang also walked to Ji Tianxing's side. He lowered his voice and advised, "Marshal Ji, you are leaving today? Isn't this a little too sudden? Even if you don't want to participate in the celebratory feast, please stay for 2 more days. Just now, Lord Saint Emperor sent a message to invite you to the Imperial City. He wants to personally host a feast for you. Even if you want to leave, you have to give Lord Saint Emperor some time to personally send you off." Ji Tianxing didn't have a good impression of Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor and didn't want to give him any face. Thus, he shook his head indifferently and said, "Marshal Du, this seat indeed has important matters to attend to. I have to rush back to Luotian Mountain as soon as possible to report. As for Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor, this seat won't wait for him. I believe he can understand. The war has just ended and there are many things to settle. The Scarlet Sun Empire also needs to rest and recuperate. He will definitely be busy with work. Ji Tianxing rejected Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor's good intentions. His attitude was very firm as he insisted on leaving. Du Chengchang and the other generals couldn't persuade him. They could only carry a heart full of regret as they respectfully sent him off from the discussion hall. When he reached the plaza outside the hall, Ji Tianxing stopped and cupped his fist to everyone. Everyone, this seat will be leaving now. Take care of yourselves. After speaking, he turned and flew up into the sky, disappearing into the horizon as fast as lightning. Du Chengchang and the other generals looked up at his departing figure. They shook their heads and whispered to each other. Sigh, we finally won the war and defeated the devil race, but we didn't have the chance to have a drink with Marshal Ji. What kind of person do you think Marshal Ji is? He is powerful, his identity is mysterious, his methods are unfathomable, his military skills are divine, and he can predict the future. This is simply a perfect god. The most unbelievable thing is that Marshal Ji is so outstanding, but he doesn't care about worldly possessions, let alone fame. No matter how much the people of the world respect and worship him, he is indifferent and doesn't have the slightest bit of pride or arrogance. Chapter 2142. 10 days later, Ji Tianxing returned to Luotian Mountain. This was not the first time he came back. But every time he returned to Luotian Mountain, the scene on the mountain was the same. He landed on Luotian Mountain, and the guards outside the main hall quickly greeted him and bowed respectfully. Greetings, eldest senior brother. Eldest senior brother, you are finally back. Eldest senior brother, Granny Long told us to look for her in the study when you come back. The guards were obviously under Granny Long's orders. Ji Tianxing nodded to express his understanding, and walked through the square to Granny Long's study. Half a quarter of an hour later, he entered the study and saw Granny Long. Granny Long was sitting in front of a desk, handling official business with a solemn expression, and reading some memorials. Ji Tianxing glanced at them. These memorials came from the several empires in the Northern Territory, and most of them were related to the post-war matters. Granny Long, I'm back. He knocked on the door of the study and greeted Granny Long. Granny Long was startled awake, and quickly put down the memorials in her hand, and looked at him with a smile. Tianxing, our great hero, you are finally back. What are you still standing there for? Quickly sit down and talk. Ji Tianxing smiled and nodded, and sat down opposite her. Granny Long, you should have heard the news of the demon race's withdrawal, right? Granny Long quickly nodded, and pointed to the memorials and letters piled up on the desk, and said with a smile, Of course, look at these memorials and letters, they are all from the Northern Territory. The demon race's army has retreated, and we have finally won the war. Now, the several empires are also in a mess, and the people have returned to their homes, and there are too many things to deal with. This old one is so busy that she almost fainted. Ji Tianxing smiled and said, Thank you for your trouble, Granny. Granny Long quickly waved her hand and said, This old one cannot accept your words. This old one just stayed in Luotian Mountain to deal with the memorials and letters. How is that tiring? But Tianxing, you went to the battlefield in the Northern Territory alone, personally led the army, and fought in all kinds of battles. Who knows how many dangers and crises you experienced? If we're talking about the person who's had it the hardest, it's definitely you. Ji Tianxing gently shook his head and said, It's not hard. I just need to run around. Seeing him being so humble, Granny Long's smile became even brighter, and her eyes became even more kind. Now that the Luoshui God Nation has won, the biggest contributor is you. You don't know, but in the past 2 to 3 months, the entire Divine Kingdom citizens have been singing praises of your legendary deeds. God knows how many young martial artists have taken you as an idol to prostrate themselves in worship. There are also countless young girls who see you as the most perfect man and are obsessed with you. I also heard that the people who returned to their homes in the White Frost Empire, Changlong Empire, and Qiang Empire spontaneously raised funds to build Taoist temples and temples for you. They even cast a golden body for you. The people have agreed that at the end of every month, the people will hold a ceremony to pray for you. Ji Tianxing was stunned for a moment, then he waved his hand and said, "That can't be done. Only the martial god who protects a divine nation is qualified to cast a golden body and enjoy incense. I'm only a martial sage now. The people are thinking too highly of me by doing this." Granny Long laughed heartily and shook her head. No, Tianxing, you're too humble. The 3 divine masters can cast a golden body and enjoy incense. Although you're not a divine master, you're an invincible martial god, a great hero who saved millions of people. With such a great contribution and kindness, you're indeed qualified to enjoy the incense offerings of the people. At this point, she suddenly thought of something and smiled. That's right, there have been rumors in the divine kingdom that some time ago, you broke through to the martial sage realm on the battlefield. At that time, the golden light filled the sky and the 9 dragons soaring in the sky lasted for 3 days and 3 nights before dissipating. Not to mention the few empires in the northern region, even the Luotian mountain could see it. I never thought that you would be so monstrous that you could break through to the martial sage realm in just a few years. Furthermore, when you broke through to the martial sage realm, the heavenly vision was unprecedented. Ji Tianxing furrowed his brows and asked in a low voice, "Granny, you mean that the news of me breaking through to the martial sage realm is already known to everyone?" "Yes." Granny Long nodded her head solemnly and said, "This matter is not only known to everyone in the Luoshui Divine Kingdom, but it has also spread to the Heaven Extinction Divine Kingdom and the Vast Divine Kingdom. After all, you led the army to the northern region and were invincible, creating miracles and shocking the world. Now, you're a famous hero and the human race's #1 genius. It's as if the news about you has grown wings and spread quickly." Hearing her words, Ji Tianxing became even more worried and asked, "Granny, other than this, have you heard any other rumors?" "What other rumors?" Granny Long asked curiously. Ji Tianxing hesitated for a moment before explaining, "It's a rumor about my background." "Oh, you're talking about that." Granny Long suddenly understood and nodded her head. "There are some rumors that say that you're the reincarnation of Kenshin. Furthermore, they say that you have eyes and eyebrows. However, this rumor is not widespread and many people only think that it's baseless gossip. After all, how can Kenshin, who has been dead for thousands of years, come back to life?" As she spoke, Granny Long observed Ji Tianxing's expression and reaction. Ji Tianxing's face was calm as he said in a low voice, "That means that the news has spread?" Granny Long nodded her head and did not say anything. As for Ji Tianxing's true identity, she already had an answer in her heart. She only wanted to know what Ji Tianxing's attitude was. "Tianxing, the rumors about your identity are too outrageous and I'm afraid that no one will believe them. If you don't want to be exposed, I will send people to suppress the news and prevent it from spreading. If you want to become famous and reach a higher level, you might as well use this opportunity to shock the world again." Ji Tianxing pondered in silence for a while before raising his head and saying with an indifferent expression, "Those who should know already know. Even if the news spreads, it will only let more unrelated people know. Granny, you don't need to worry about this and you don't need to cover it up. It will only arouse suspicion. What will come, but I already have the ability to bear it and am prepared for it." Granny Long understood his attitude and nodded her head with a smile. "That's good. As long as you make up your mind, Tianxing, Luotian Mountain and Luoshui God Nation will always be your strong backing." Ji Tianxing nodded his head slightly and asked, "By the way, have you reported the demon race's retreat and God Nation's victory to the Divine Master?" Granny Long nodded her head. "Such good news, I naturally reported it to the Divine Master as soon as possible. In addition, the Divine Master has been in seclusion for 300 years and will be coming out soon." Chapter 2143. Ji Tianxing understood that martial god Luo Shui would definitely summon him after he came out of seclusion. In fact, he also wanted to meet martial god Luo Shui. He wanted to see how much she had grown. "All right, if the Divine Master comes out of seclusion, please inform me." Ji Tianxing nodded and agreed to this matter. Granny Long smiled with satisfaction and continued, "In addition to this good news, I have another good news to tell you. In recent months, Yun Yao has been in seclusion in Cloud Water Palace. After she refined that divine pearl, her cultivation soared and her realm advanced by leaps and bounds. Even I was shocked." At the mention of Yun Yao, Ji Tianxing's interest was immediately piqued and he asked with bright eyes, "Oh? What happened to Yao Yao?" Granny Long said with a smile, "You just came back and haven't seen Yun Yao yet, right? In the past 3 months, she has passed 3 heavenly tribulations in a row. It can be said that her strength has soared. I estimate that in half a month, she will pass another heavenly tribulation. Back then, you passed 3 heavenly tribulations in half a year, which was already shocking. Now Yun Yao is passing heavenly tribulation every month, which is an unprecedented miracle. The disciples and guards of Luotian Mountain are all scared silly." Speaking of this, Granny Long's face was full of gratification and pride. She was in a good mood. Ji Tianxing also found it incredible and was shocked. "Is that so? It's indeed incredible. At this rate, it won't be long before she can break through the martial sage realm and catch up with me." Granny Long frowned slightly and hesitated for a moment before shaking her head. "That's not necessarily the case. Your estimate is too optimistic. Previously, I visited Yun Yao a few times and asked her about the specific situation. According to her estimate, that divine pearl can help her raise her realm by 5 or 6 levels. At most, she can reach the 9th level of the crossing tribulation realm. If she wants to break through the martial sage realm, the power of one divine pearl is not enough, unless she obtains another one." Ji Tianxing suddenly understood and nodded. "I see. No wonder you sent me an urgent message and asked me to come back as soon as possible." Grandma Long nodded and said, "The divine pearl is too important to Yun Yao. Not only can it help her increase her cultivation, but it can also prolong her life. Therefore, when I found out that a divine orb had appeared at the Divine Martial Sacred Assembly, I immediately informed you. You have already reached the martial sage realm and you are not even 1,000 years old. You meet the requirements to participate in the Divine Martial Sacred Assembly. Moreover, your battle prowess is outstanding, and no one in the same realm can defeat you. If you participate in the Shenwu's Sacred Assembly, none of the young martial saints will be a match for you. That pearl that contains wind and fire will definitely be yours." Ji Tianxing thought for a while, then nodded seriously and said, "Granny, don't worry, I will definitely go to the Divine Martial Sacred Assembly. As long as it's related to the God Orb, even if it's just slightly similar, I won't miss it. Only, where would the Divine Martial Sacred Assembly be held? When will it be held?" Granny Long took out a jade slip from her sleeve and handed it to Ji Tianxing. She warned, "According to the usual practice, the Divine Martial Sacred Assembly will be held in the Heaven's End Divine Nation at the Void Stage. It will be held on the 10th of the next month, so there is still half a month left. The details of the Divine Martial Sacred Assembly, as well as the process and results of the previous sacred assemblies, are all recorded in this jade slip. Go back and take a good look at it, so you can understand it better and be prepared." Ji Tianxing took the jade slip and bowed to Granny Long, saying, "Thank you, Granny, for making such thorough preparations." Granny Long smiled and nodded. She took out another interspatial ring and handed it to him. "This time, you went to the north to quell the war and drove away the demon army. You have made a great contribution that is hard to come by in 1,000 years. The monarchs of the kingdoms in the north do not have the right to reward you. Logically speaking, the Divine Master should personally reward you and confer you a title and glory. But the Divine Master has not come out of seclusion, so I will do it for you. The cultivation resources and magical treasures in this ring are all your rewards. Also, the Divine Master has bestowed upon you the title of Martial Saint Tianxing, the Imperial Protector War God, and the position of the Divine Nation's Protector Commander. You will be in charge of 90,000 immortal guards. In the Divine Nation, the Marshal's Mansion has also been prepared for you. You can stay there at any time." Ji Tianxing was startled. He kept the interspatial ring and asked curiously, Granny Long, these titles and positions are all from the Divine Master Luo Shui? That's right. Granny Long smiled and explained, the Imperial Protector War God is a title and glory. In the future, wherever you go to Luo Shui Divine Nation, you can deploy your troops. The billions of citizens of Luo Shui Divine Nation, all the soldiers and Saint Emperors will listen to your commands. The Imperial Protector Commander is also an empty position. If you want to train the Immortal Guards or give them any task, they will do it. But normally, if you don't want to share the burden, you can ignore it. Ji Tianxing did not say anything. He thought to himself, the Divine Nation is Luo Shui's immortal abode, and the Immortal Guard's commander is her most trusted right-hand man. She appointed me as the Immortal Guard's commander, which means she has entrusted me with her safety. It can be seen that she trusts me a lot. Could it be she already knew my true identity? As he thought of this, an indescribable feeling arose in his heart. He thought to himself, she and I both know each other's identities and secrets, but we don't expose each other and we trust each other. She didn't let me down in the end. At this time, Granny Long saw that he was distracted and reminded him, Tianxing, regarding your title and glory, this old one will announce it to the world very soon. You have been fighting outside for so long, and it's rare for you to come back. Quickly go and see Yun Yao. If that's the case, then I will take my leave. Ji Tianxing came back to his senses and cupped his fists at Granny Long before he turned and left. As soon as he returned to Cloud Water Palace, the Golden Dragon and the Black Eagle came up to him and bowed respectfully. This subordinate pays his respects to young Master Ji. Ji Tianxing nodded and raised his hand to signal them to rise. He then walked towards Yun Yao's room. The Golden Dragon stood guard outside the door. The Black Shadow followed and reminded, young Master, Master is in seclusion. Ji Tianxing had long expected that Yun Yao had just refined the divine bead not long ago. Now that her strength had skyrocketed, she must have been in seclusion. I'm just going to see her. The Black Shadow didn't say anything else and quietly guarded the door. Ji Tianxing walked to the corner of the room, activated the array formation of the secret room, and opened the door of the secret room. He stepped into the secret chamber and saw that the dark secret chamber was filled with dense five-colored spiritual light and was filled with a majestic aura of mana. In the middle of the secret room, Yun Yao, who was wearing a moon-white dress, was sitting cross-legged on a futon refined from a piece of top-grade spirit jade. Her eyes were closed, her hands were placed on her knees, and she was concentrating on cultivating. Her whole body was enveloped in a layer of dark golden brilliance, exuding a vast aura. Ji Tianxing could clearly sense that she had reached the 7th stage of the Crossing Tribulation Realm and was trying her best to break through to the 8th stage of the Crossing Tribulation Realm. Chapter 2144. Ji Tianxing walked to Yun Yao's side with light footsteps. He did not make a sound to avoid alarming her. He sat down in front of Yun Yao and looked at her gently, his eyes filled with gratification. After not seeing her for a few months, Yun Yao was still as beautiful as ever. Her temperament was otherworldly, and she was as pure as ice. Even though she was pregnant with 2 children, she did not look tired at all. She was still as beautiful as a fairy. Ji Tianxing stared at her for a long time and felt that he could not get enough of her. After a long silence, he muttered to himself, Yao Yao, it's a pity that you're cultivating in seclusion and can't hear what I'm saying. However, I have 2 pieces of good news for you now that I've come to see you. The war in the north has subsided, and the demon army has retreated. After this battle, Dark North Mountain's vitality has been greatly damaged, and they will need to recuperate for the next 20 years. They will not be able to invade the Luo Shui Divine Kingdom again. In addition, I also successfully broke through to the Martial Sage Realm during the battle. Now that I've returned to the Martial Sage Realm, I can roam the Shenwu continent fearlessly. Besides the 3 martial gods and the ancestral demon god, no one can do anything to me. I really hope that you can break through to the Martial Sage Realm as soon as possible. Don't worry, when I go to the Heavenly End Divine Kingdom this time, I will definitely win that Windfire Pearl. If that pearl is really the divine pearl that you need, then you will be able to break through to the martial sage realm very soon. Ji Tianxing lowered his voice and spoke at a steady pace. As soon as he finished speaking, a clear child's voice rang out in his mind. Father, don't you know how much Mother missed and worried about you? Since you're back, Yaya will wake Mother up so that you can talk to her. Without a doubt, this crisp and childish voice of a girl was Yaya's soul transmission. Ji Tianxing's body shook, and he looked at Yun Yao's belly in disbelief. A surprised smile appeared on his face. Heavens, our Ya actually knows how to transmit messages with her divine soul? As he spoke, he could not help but reach out to touch Yun Yao's belly. However, his sudden awakening would definitely disturb Yun Yao's cultivation. As a result, he hurriedly withdrew his hand and said in a low voice, Yaya, Mother is at a critical juncture in her closed-door cultivation. You can't disturb her, let alone wake her up. Yaya's voice rang out in his mind once more. Since Father has said so, then Yaya will not wake Mother up. Father, Yaya and Big Brother are already at the soul refining realm. Naturally, they can communicate with each other through their souls. Ji Tianxing was surprised again. He smiled and said, I didn't think that you would reach the soul refining stage from the Sky Yuan stage in just 1 year. Looks like you've both cultivated the 9 Heavens Cloud Dragon technique and the Limitless Stars technique to a small degree. I wonder when all of you will be born. By then, all of you will probably be at the Essence Soul realm, right? Oomph. Yaya pretended to be displeased and snorted. She said angrily, Father, are you saying that because you don't want to see Yaya and Big Brother earlier? Ha! Ji Tianxing could not help but laugh. Halfway through, he was afraid that he would wake Yun Yao up, so he hurriedly lowered his voice. Yaya was amused by him and giggled. She said mischievously, Father, are you that afraid of Mother? Ahem. Ji Tianxing pretended to cough and was about to give a sincere explanation. At this time, another clear and tender voice rang out. Yaya, Father is not afraid of Mother, but respects and loves her. To Father, Mother is like the bright moon in the 9th heaven. She is a rare treasure. He cannot tolerate any mishaps or grievances. It was obvious that this was Qinshin's voice. Although he was not born, he already had extensive knowledge and experience. When he spoke, he sounded like a little adult. Of course, he was more like an elegant and handsome young man. Ji Tianxing nodded and said with a smile, Yaya, did you hear what Big Brother said? Father is shameless. Yaya pretended to be unhappy and said coquettishly, Yaya wants to hear Father say it himself. Why did Father let Big Brother explain it for you? Ji Tianxing chuckled and said playfully, Yaya is so mischievous. You are not like Mother and you are not like Father. You will definitely be an unruly little princess in the future. Qinshin, on the other hand, is so well educated and considerate. He is very much like Father when he was young. Without waiting for him to finish, Yaya mercilessly exposed him. Father is lying again. Mother said long ago that Big Brother is not like Father. Father was very old-fashioned and boring when he was young. Your mother really said that? Ji Tianxing immediately blushed with shame. Yaya said with a little pride, Of course. Mother said that if it weren't for the fact that Father is handsome, loyal, and hardworking, Mother wouldn't have married you. Ji Tianxing did not know whether to laugh or cry. He asked, Yaya, are you lying to Father? Yaya immediately stopped talking. Qinshin hurriedly helped her out and changed the topic. Father, Qinshin knows that you are busy with work and are pressed for time. I am afraid that you will have to leave again soon after coming back to visit Mother. However, Mother is at a critical juncture in her closed-door cultivation. It is not convenient for her to meet you. Why don't you let Qinshin pass on the message if you have anything to say to Mother? Ji Tianxing nodded and said, Yes, Qinshin is still the most sensible. I do have something to say to your mother. Qinshin, remember it well? Then he told Qinshin and Yaya what he wanted to say to Yun Yao and asked them to pass on the message. After he finished, he asked about Qinshin and Yaya's cultivation situation. The 9 Heavens Cloud Dragon technique and the Infinite Stars technique were both true Sky God techniques. They were extremely mysterious. Even though Xianxia and Xianxia were both extraordinarily talented, it was inevitable that there would be some ambiguities. After Ji Tianxing asked about their situation, he patiently answered their questions. When Xianxia and Xianxia heard this, they were suddenly enlightened. All of their confusion was resolved. After a full 6 hours, Ji Tianxing reluctantly left the secret room. The current him had a beautiful wife and adorable and smart children. His life could be said to be complete. If he could choose, he would rather not leave and stay by his wife and children's side. Unfortunately, he had no choice. There were too many things that he had not done. Perhaps he could only enjoy the joy of having a family when he reached the peak of the divine way and became invincible. The next morning, Ji Tianxing left Luotian Mountain. This time, he was going to Heaven and Divine Nation to participate in the Divine Martial Sacred Assembly and meet the young martial saints of the continent. However, he already had a plan in mind. From Luotian Mountain to Heaven and Divine Nation, he could take a detour and pass by Tianzhu Mountain. He had not returned to Tianzhu Mountain for too long and was worried about the situation there. He could use this opportunity to take a detour back to Tianzhu Mountain and check on the situation of Huanglong Daoist, Black Dragon, Qian Yu and White Dragon's remnant soul. Chapter 2145. Ji Tianxing traveled at top speed and arrived at the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains 7 days later. After breaking through to the martial sage realm, his traveling speed had also increased by a few steps. He seemed to be strolling in the sky, but in reality, every step he took covered a distance of 50 to 60 miles. As for the distance he could teleport, it had reached a terrifying distance of 300 miles. If he used some special techniques, he could even teleport 2,000 to 3,000 miles. Of course, he could only use these special techniques occasionally and could not use them continuously. When Ji Tianxing returned to the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains, the sun was setting in the west. The faint golden afterglow of the setting sun shone on the towering Pillar of Heaven's Mountains, causing the entire mountain to be covered in a layer of sacred golden light. Hundreds of flowers bloomed on the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains, creating a shade of green. There were also flowing springs, waterfalls, and hanging icicles. The surroundings were surrounded by white jade and colorful spiritual qi, making it seem like a dream. Above the clouds, there were even spiritual cranes flying past the peak of the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains. Flocks of birds circled around, making it look like an otherworldly cave abode. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing felt a deep sense of comfort. With the passage of time, the power of the Big Dipper star Luo and the Earth Fiend Spirit Praying Array have also gradually recovered to their peak and become more and more powerful. Now, the area within the 108 mountains around the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains has become a paradise full of spiritual qi. Especially the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains, the spiritual qi is extremely abundant. It is finally going to be restored to a martial sage realm. These thoughts flashed through his mind as he slowly descended from the sky. The holy city and dojo at the peak of the mountain were still the same as before. However, upon closer inspection, he could see some changes. The dojo, the 18 palaces, and the 36 courtyards were all cleaned and spotless. Moreover, there were people living in each of the palaces and courtyards, making them seem prosperous. The forest, herb garden, and beast garden outside the holy city had also been renovated. Hundreds of spiritual flowers and herbs were planted there, and many rare spiritual beasts were raised there. The current Pillar of Heaven's Mountains had finally recovered the appearance and aura of a first-rate sect. Ji Tianxing could tell at a glance that the Huanglong Daoist must have worked hard during the time he was not at the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains. Swoosh! He descended from the sky and landed outside the gate of the Pillar Palace. The guards at the door were obviously stunned when they saw him. After a moment of hesitation, the guards respectfully bowed and said, "Greetings to young Master Ji." Although the disciples and guards of the Tianzhu Mountain were secretly guessing that Ji Tianxing might be the reincarnation of their Grandmaster Kenshin, they were still worried that Ji Tianxing might be the reincarnation of their Grandmaster. However, everyone could only guess in their hearts. They did not dare to be sure, nor did they dare to discuss it openly. On the surface, everyone addressed him as young Master Ji and respected him as the successor of Kenshin. Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and signaled the guards to dispense with the formalities. He asked in a dignified tone, "Where is Huanglong Daoist? Take me to see him." The leading guard hurriedly bowed and replied, reporting to young Master Ji, "The great Immortal is currently cultivating in the Heavenly Pillar Palace. It is said that he has made another breakthrough in his divine arts." Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and revealed a gratified smile. "Since that's the case, I'll go take care of other things first. I'll look for him later." After saying that, he entered the Heavenly Pillar Palace alone and returned to his residence. Just as he returned to his residence, Ji Bai, who was guarding the entrance, respectfully greeted him. "Ji Bai greets young master." Ji Tianxing looked at him in confusion and asked, "Ji Bai, why are you guarding here instead of cultivating in your residence? Don't tell me, after I leave, you'll still be guarding the entrance every day like usual?" Ji Bai did not hide anything and replied truthfully, reporting to young master, "This subordinate and Shohei are your followers and guards. We must fulfill our responsibilities. Even if young master goes out to do things, this subordinate and Shohei will still guard your residence." Pedantic. Ji Tianxing was both angry and amused. He asked, "When I'm not at the Heavenly Pillar Mountain, you and Shohei should return to your residence and cultivate. As for my residence, there are maids on duty to clean it and guards to take turns to guard it. How can you become strong martial artists if you waste your time like this? Tell me, did Huanglong ask you to do this? Or was it an elder's idea?" Ji Bai cupped his hands and explained, "Young master, this is not an order from the great deity or any elder. This subordinate and Shohei are willing to do it. Since young master has ordered, this subordinate and Shohei will obey and will not be so stupid in the future." Ji Tianxing obviously knew that this was Ji Bai and Shohei's loyalty. Of course, he did not blame Ji Bai. After staring at Ji Bai for a while, he asked, "Ji Bai, the technique you cultivate is the third branch of the Stellar Sword technique, the Limitless Wind and Thunder technique. In the past few years, you have been stuck at the peak of the 6th level and have not been able to break through to the 7th level, right?" Ji Bai was stunned for a moment and quickly nodded. Young master's eyes are as sharp as torches. "That's right." Ji Tianxing nodded and flicked a dark golden ball of light into Ji Bai's forehead. The ball of light the size of a date pit immediately entered Ji Bai's sea of consciousness and blended into his memories. "This is some of my experience. It should be able to help you break through. Go back and study it well." Ji Bai only felt his soul dizzy for a moment, and then a vast sea of memories and information poured into his soul. When he heard Ji Tianxing's words, he immediately knelt down and kowtowed in surprise. "Thank you for your guidance and kindness, young master. This subordinate will remember it for the rest of my life." Ji Tianxing smiled and waved his hand, then turned and stepped into the bedroom. When he entered the room, Shohei was holding a feather duster and a rag, carefully wiping the tables, chairs, and screens. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and also reprimanded Shohei. Moreover, he also gave Shohei the corresponding guidance and rewards for his cultivation. After Shohei respectfully bowed and thanked him, he didn't dare to disturb him and quickly left. In the blink of an eye, Ji Tianxing was the only one left in the bedroom. Only then did he enter the secret room and go through the secret passage to the Star Divine Furnace deep underground. Swish! He followed the passage surrounded by starfire and flew all the way down. Soon he arrived at the Divine Furnace. He saw that the Star Divine Furnace within a radius of 100 miles had long been filled with Star Divine Fire. There was a silver sea of fire in all directions, constantly surging with waves of fire. Ji Tianxing circled around the sea of fire and quickly found Black Dragon. Black Dragon was still cultivating in seclusion. Its body had doubled in size, reaching a height of 3,000 feet, making it look like a small black mountain. Now, it cultivated the star transformation art and constantly absorbed the star power of the Star Divine Furnace. It had reached the 5th level of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. It was at the critical moment of its cultivation and seemed to be working hard to break through to the 6th level of the tribulation transcendence realm. Ji Tianxing saw that its body was full of scars, both old and knew how hard it usually cultivated. Even so, it had never slacked off in the past 2 years and had always been in seclusion in the Star Divine Furnace. Ji Tianxing didn't disturb Black Dragon and went to see Qianyu. Qianyu's state was obviously much more leisurely. With the protection of the divine artifact necklace, she actually fell asleep. Chapter 2146. The Black Dragon was dull, but hardworking. Qianyu was cunning and mischievous, but she had her own opportunities. Both of them grew quickly, so Ji Tianxing was no longer worried about them. He flew to the corner of the Star Divine Cauldron to check on the White Dragon God. The array that he had set up was still intact. Inside the array, the glazed vase had expanded several times. It was as big as a bucket and was floating quietly in the sea of fire. Ji Tianxing flew closer and took a closer look. He was overjoyed. A 1-meter-long dragon-shaped white light was coiled within the translucent bottle, and it was flickering with a lustrous light. The longevity vine had disappeared completely. Apparently, the white dragon had refined it. Even the martial sage souls that Ji Tianxing had given to the white dragon had disappeared without a trace. The 3-foot-long white dragon was the remnant soul of the white dragon god. Ji Tianxing smiled when he saw that the white dragon god had recovered. The white dragon god's remnant soul sensed his aura and moved. It twisted its body slowly and raised its lifelike dragon head. It looked at Ji Tianxing through the glazed vase. When it saw Ji Tianxing's face, it was stunned and its body trembled violently. After a long silence, it opened its eyes wide and sent a soul message. It was sad and happy at the same time. Master? Is it really you? Master? I'm not dreaming, am I? It was the voice of a young man. It sounded in Ji Tianxing's mind. He was crying and trembling with excitement. Ji Tianxing had mixed feelings when he heard that. Many memories flashed through his mind. He nodded solemnly and said emotionally, White Dragon, you've finally regained consciousness. My efforts over the past few years have not been in vain. The White Dragon was still immersed in excitement and could not believe that it was true. It looked at Ji Tianxing with bright eyes and asked in disbelief, Master, what's going on? Didn't we die in the starry sky? How did we come back to life? Am I dreaming, or have we never died at all? Are we still in the palace of the King of Gods? Ji Tianxing couldn't help but laugh. He opened the glazed treasure bottle and released the white dragon remnant soul. Thousands of years have passed in the blink of an eye, like a dream or an illusion. But no matter what, we are finally back. The white dragon quickly flew out of the glazed vase and circled around Ji Tianxing a few times, carefully sizing him up. Only after confirming that Ji Tianxing was a living body of flesh and blood did it believe that everything was real. Master, we really came back to life. It was too unbelievable. Master, what kind of divine ability did you use? He actually brought us back from the dead? Ji Tianxing smiled and shook his head. It's a long story. I'll explain it to you later. In short, I have long made preparations and plans to play a game with the heavenly Tao. The white dragon nodded as if it understood. It said excitedly, I knew it. With Master's protection, no matter how I look for trouble, I won't die in the end. Ji Tianxing stretched out his finger and flicked its head. He laughed and scolded, You little brat, you've already died once. Why are you still so playful? Hee hee. The white dragon revealed a sly smile and said proudly, Master's divine power is unparalleled. As long as you stay in the palace of the King of Gods, you can control the myriad of worlds. I've never liked to be restrained. As long as I have Master's protection, I can roam the world. Ji Tianxing patted its head and said earnestly, Don't worry. Although that is the glory of the past, we will return to the peak sooner or later. Come, take a look at where we are first. The white dragon flew around him a few more times and looked around. It asked curiously, Master, where is this? The myriad star source in the depths of the scattered star sea? Or a space-time black hole? Ji Tianxing chuckled and said in a complicated tone, "This is the pillar of heaven's mountains, the divine star furnace under the ground." A pillar of heaven's mountains? The white dragon was stunned and said in disbelief, "Master, how did we return to the mortal world? Don't we have to start all over again? Pillar of heaven's mountains. Oh right, where junior brother Huang Long and Xia Wudao? Are they still alive?" Ji Tianxing couldn't help but roll his eyes and said in a bad mood, "You're alive, how can they be dead? Are you so concerned about your senior brother and junior brother?" The white dragon quickly shook its head and said in a firm tone, "Master, they are both my junior brothers. Don't get it wrong." Ji Tianxing couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with him. He asked with a smile, "Before you woke up, I asked you to refine a strand of Lan Kuan's soul. Did you refine it?" Lan Kuan? The white dragon thought for a while and suddenly remembered. "Oh, I remember now. There is such a thing. I have already refined it. Master, when I was in a daze, I seemed to hear you say that you found a Kuan for me and wanted to help me fulfill my wish. Is it true? You really found a Kuan?" Ji Tianxing chuckled and said, "Of course. Master is really awesome." The white dragon was wild with excitement and happily spun a few times. He suddenly realized that he said something wrong and quickly changed his words. Cough cough. What this disciple means is that Master is really omnipotent. You can actually find a Kuan in the mortal world. Back then, this disciple traveled all over the heavens and thousands of worlds and didn't meet a living Kuan. Ji Tianxing didn't say more and flew up with it in one hand. Swoosh. In the blink of an eye, he left the divine star furnace with the white dragon and returned to the secret room. He took out the sword of burial of heaven and placed it in the secret room. After opening the sword world, he personally brought the white dragon into the sword world. After a while, he came to the sky above a huge lake. The lake was thousands of miles wide and the water surface was sparkling. The lake water was so clear that the bottom could be seen. The ice blue Kuan was leisurely lying at the bottom of the lake and seemed to be sleeping. Ji Tianxing stood above the lake and pointed to the ice blue figure at the bottom of the lake. He said to the white dragon, "Look, that's the blue Kuan that I found for you." The white dragon was wild with excitement. It flew around Ji Tianxing several times and kept rubbing his arms and clothes. It was full of excitement and said, "Thank you so much, Master. This disciple only has 2 wishes in this life. Master, you have helped this disciple to fulfill half of them." After that, it couldn't wait to fly to the bottom of the lake to observe the blue Kuan closely. At this moment, the blue Kuan that was sleeping was awakened. Suddenly seeing a white light flying over, it subconsciously opened its mouth and spat out an ice blue brilliance. Bang! The white dragon couldn't dodge in time and was immediately hit by the ice blue brilliance. It screamed and flew out. Although it wasn't defeated, it was frozen by the ice blue brilliance and sealed into a block of ice. It flew out in the air for 10 miles before falling into the lake and floating on the water surface. Chapter 2147. The white dragon had just woken up not long ago. It was still a remnant soul and was very weak. Lan Kuan had the strength of the 7th layer of the crossing calamity realm. He subconsciously spat out a cloud of dark north Xianbing. How could the white dragon resist it? The white dragon was sealed by the dark north Xianbing and floated on the lake. It couldn't break the seal by itself, so it had to ask Ji Tianxing for help. It said with a voice transmission, "Master, the Kuan you found seems to have a tendency to be violent. It's the first time I met it, and it welcomed me in such a special way." The white dragon's tone was quite depressed, but it could not hide the excitement in its heart. Ji Tianxing chuckled and said, "You are too impatient." At this time, Lan Kuan flew from the bottom of the lake to Ji Tianxing and nodded to him. "Master, why are you here? Are you here to visit me?" Lan Kuan blinked its huge eyes and looked at Ji Tianxing with bright eyes. Obviously, it was too bored to sleep alone in the big lake. It would be happy and grateful that Ji Tianxing could come to see it and talk to it. "I came to see how you are doing." Ji Tianxing nodded and looked at it seriously. He criticized, "Lan Kuan, I taught you the sky swallowing technique, which is the most precious king-level technique in the world. You don't know how to cherish it and don't meditate and cultivate. You actually sleep at the bottom of the lake. I am very disappointed. Seeing that he was angry, Lan Kuan lowered his head in frustration and said in a low voice, Master, I fought with the demon army on the battlefield before and spent a lot of energy. At this time, a block of ice the size of a house flew over. The white dragon's voice came out from it, and it quickly pleaded for Lan Kuan. Master, don't be too harsh on Lan Kuan. It is still young, and it has suffered a lot of injuries in the previous battle. Look at the scars on its body. Why is it a little ugly? It's different from what I imagined. At first, White Dragon was still pleading for Lan Kuan, but halfway through his words, after carefully sizing up Lan Kuan, he suddenly showed a look of disdain. When Ji Tianxing saw that it was still sealed by the Xianbing, he waved his hand and released a stream of star fire to disperse the Xianbing. With the seal removed, the white dragon regained its freedom and circled twice in the air. Lan Kuan also turned his head to look at it, his eyes widening in surprise. Master? This little white snake, who is it? Before Ji Tianxing could say anything, White Dragon suddenly became unhappy. Hey, fathead fish, who are you calling little white snake? Look at your big eyes. Why are your eyesight so bad? Did the water get in? I'm clearly a dragon, a majestic and mighty white dragon. How can you mistake me for a snake? The white dragon flew under Lan Kuan's nose and showed him his dragon-shaped body with an indignant expression. However, Master will not meet him when I go to Tianju God Nation this time. Master has other things to do. White Dragon said without hesitation, Master, I don't want to stay in Tianju Mountain, please take me with you. Ji Tianxing glanced at it and chuckled, You will cause trouble wherever you go, Master is not willing to take you, you should stay in Tianju Mountain and cultivate. White Dragon quickly wrapped around his arm and begged, Master, I am now a remnant soul, how can I cultivate? Even if I want to recover my strength, I have to devour souls. Why don't you bring your disciple along? It's too boring to stay in Tianju Mountain. Ji Tianxing said playfully, You don't want to stay in Tianju Mountain, are you afraid of being bored, or afraid that Huang Long will make fun of you? Humph! How dare junior brother Huang Long make fun of me? White Dragon snorted and continued to beg, Master, take me with you, I promise I will not cause trouble for you. Moreover, Fathead Fish has been cultivating in the sword world, I can accompany it and cultivate a relationship with it. Ji Tianxing thought for a moment, and then nodded in agreement. Okay, Master can promise you, but you have to be honest and coordinate with Lan Kuan as soon as possible. Seeing that he finally agreed, White Dragon immediately smiled and bowed to thank him. Chapter 2148. Ji Tianxing returned to the secret room and kept the burial of Heaven Sword. He did not care how Bai Long and Lan Kuan would interact or if they could maintain a peaceful relationship. He believed that Bai Long would be able to convince Lan Kuan with his glib tongue. Not long after, a guard came to the secret room to report the news. Young Master Ji, the great deity wishes to see you. Bring him to the study room and wait. I will be there soon. Ji Tianxing replied and walked out of the secret room. When he rushed to the study room, Huang Long Daoist was already waiting for him. Greetings, Master. Seeing Ji Tianxing enter the study room, Huang Long Daoist quickly came forward and bowed respectfully. You may rise. Ji Tianxing nodded and walked to the study table. He sat down and looked at Huang Long Daoist with a smile. I have not seen you for a year and you have made a breakthrough in your strength? Huang Long Daoist quickly cupped his hands and bowed. He answered truthfully, Master, I have been in the rank 5 martial sage realm for 200 years. With your guidance, I made a breakthrough. I am not talented and this small improvement is not worth mentioning. Master, you have recovered to the martial sage realm in such a short period of time. This is unbelievable. Furthermore, when you broke through to the martial sage realm, you caused the golden light to fill the sky and the 9 dragons to illuminate the world. This news has spread throughout the mainland. When I heard this news, I was shocked and excited. Ji Tianxing nodded and said sincerely, "When I returned, I thought that after I broke through to the martial sage realm, I would stay in the Pillar of Heaven's Mountain for a long period of time and plan for the development of the Pillar of Heaven's Mountain. I wanted to restore the glory of the past as soon as possible. However, I am currently tied up with worldly affairs. There are too many things that I have yet to finish. I really can't leave." Huanglong Daoist immediately understood what he meant and said solemnly, "Master, please do not worry. I will guard the Pillar of Heaven's Mountain and do my best to rebuild the Holy Land and restore it to its former glory. Master, you are a god and have many important things to do. You can do them with peace of mind. With me guarding the Pillar of Heaven's Mountain, you do not have to worry." Ji Tianxing nodded and said with a gratified expression, "It's best that you can understand Master's meaning. I've seen it before and there are many changes to the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains. It seems that you've been working hard." Huanglong Daoist did not dare to claim credit for himself. He hurriedly bowed and said, "It is my duty to share Shizuan's burden." Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and asked, "Briefly explain the current situation." Huanglong Daoist organized his thoughts and reported seriously, "Reporting to Master, our sect has recovered some of its vitality and has the foundation and power of a first-rate sect. Currently, he had 8,000 disciples, 2,000 of which were disciples and 6,000 servants. Within the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains, there were 9 sects, 18 factions, more than 400 cities and villages, and close to 500 million warriors and civilians. Within the Holy City, the 18 palaces and the 36 halls all had their disciples staying in them. The Spirit Beast Garden, Spirit Herb Garden, and Artifact Forging Workshop were all open to the public. Master, you've repeatedly created miracles and created a shocking legend of invincibility. This has also made the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains more and more famous. Not only have the people under the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains submitted, but many warriors and civilians from the 3 divine kingdoms have also moved to the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains. All in all, our sect is currently thriving and the situation is great. We're not far from recovering to our peak." Ji Tianxing nodded and instructed, "You have to send people to investigate the civilians and warriors from the 3 divine kingdoms. Especially the people from the Heaven End Divine Kingdom. Do not let any spies in." "Disciple understands and has always done so," Huanglong Daoist replied. Ji Tianxing frowned and thought for a while. He asked again, "Oh right, the cultivation resources for the disciples have always been doubled. The cultivation resources that Master left behind should be used up soon, right?" This Huanglong Daoist hesitated for a while before answering truthfully, "Reporting to Master, the cultivation resources that Master left behind, in addition to our sect's inventory, have been used up long ago. Although Disciple has thought of ways to open up new mines and plant spirit herbs, the results are too slow. However, a few months ago, when you were leading the army from the Luoshui Divine Kingdom, the Luoshui Divine Kingdom sent a large number of cultivation resources. Because of this, our sect was able to recover." "So that's how it is." Ji Tianxing nodded slightly, a complicated look flashed in his eyes. Then, he took out a ring from his spatial ring and handed it to Huanglong Daoist. "When Master returned to the Luoshui Divine Kingdom, Granny Long gave me this ring, saying that it was a reward from the Luoshui martial god. Master has already checked it. There are mountains of spirit stones, spirit pills, magic treasures, talismans, and so on. The value is over 1 billion. Master has kept some rare treasures for my own use. As for the ordinary spirit stones, spirit pills, and other resources, use them to enrich our sect's treasury." Huanglong Daoist was shocked and said in disbelief, "Master, the Luoshui Divine Kingdom sent over 400 million cultivation resources a few months ago, and now they're giving you 1 billion cultivation resources? Isn't that Luoshui martial god too generous? Disciple feels that this matter is fishy. Could it be that the Luoshui martial god already knows your true identity?" Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said with a solemn expression, "She should have guessed Master's identity a long time ago. Some rumors and news in the recent 2 years made her even more certain. The reason why she did this is to help us rebuild the pillar of heaven's mountains. It can be considered as returning a favor to Master. So that's how it is. Wang Lin Daoist was enlightened and said with a gratified expression, "For the past 1,000 years, only the Luoshui divine kingdom has secretly taken care of our sect. Disciple knows this in his heart. Now that Master has returned, the Luoshui divine kingdom will definitely be our sect's most reliable ally." Ji Tianxing thought for a moment and said, "Master will go to the heaven and divine kingdom tomorrow. Guard the pillar of heaven's mountains well and be careful. If you encounter any trouble, send a message to Master or ask the Luoshui divine kingdom for help." Disciple understands. Wang Lin Daoist cupped his hands and bowed. Ji Tianxing reminded him a few more words before getting up and leaving. After returning to his residence, he circulated his qi and adjusted his breathing for a few hours. When the sky brightened, he quietly left the pillar of heaven's mountains and flew to the heaven and divine kingdom. This time, he didn't bring Qian Yu and the black dragon with him, only the blue Kuan and the white dragon. On the way, he had nothing to do, so he used his divine sense to check the situation in the sword world. It was fine if he didn't see it, but when he saw it, he was shocked. The white dragon was actually sitting on the blue Kuan's head, flying over thousands of mountains and rivers, rushing to peaceful Earth City. After the two of them arrived at peaceful Earth City, they didn't harm the Earth spirit race's dwarves. They only clamored in the sky, asking the Xitigarbha divine armor to come out. The Xitigarbha divine armor had been sleeping in the underground mine. After being awakened, it angrily flew into the sky and confronted the blue Kuan. The white dragon then instigated the blue Kuan to lure the Xitigarbha divine armor to a remote mountain to teach it a lesson. Chapter 2149. Ji Tianxing was too lazy to care about White Dragon bringing Lan Kuan to cause trouble. Anyway, he knew that White Dragon would not harm the people of the Earth Spirit race. Even that Xitigarbha divine armor would at most be beaten up. There would not be any future trouble. Ji Tianxing retracted his divine sense and continued to rush to Heaven and God Nation. Before leaving, he had already read the jade slip given by Granny Long. It recorded the matters of the Divine Martial Sacred Assembly. The previous Divine Martial Sacred Assemblies were held on the Void Platform. The Void Platform was a mysterious space outside of this world. In the endless void, the vast stars could be seen clearly. The entrance to the Void Platform was in Heaven and God Nation's Sky City. Sky City was in the center of Heaven and God Nation. Thousands of miles away was the famous Heaven End Mountain. Heaven End Mountain was the sacred martial ground of Heaven End God Nation. It was also Heaven End Martial God's training ground. Its status was equal to God's Sealing Mountain and God Luo Mountain. Sky City was the closest city to Heaven End Mountain. It had a history of 3,000 years. The ancient city was majestic and vast. The city walls were tall and towering. It covered an area of 300 miles and could accommodate millions of martial artists and civilians. Since ancient times, Sky City had always been prosperous. It gathered martial artists from all over the world. The several empires of Heaven and God Nation had to pass through Sky City. As early as 1,000 years ago, Kenshin had been to Heaven and God Nation and passed by Sky City. But he did not stay in the city at that time, so he did not have any impression of Sky City. 6 days later, Ji Tianxing arrived at Sky City as scheduled. It was noon and the sky was a little dark. Scattered gray clouds floated in the sky. The dim sunlight could not penetrate the clouds. Occasionally, a bit of light would shine through the gaps. A few hundred miles away, Ji Tianxing saw a dark brown majestic city on the ground in front of him. The city was surrounded by dark green plains. It was covered with grass and forests. 1,000 miles away were mountains. Arriving near the sky-gazing city, Ji Tianxing observed the ancient city from a close distance. He could feel an ancient and vigorous aura. The towering city walls were hundreds of meters tall and stretched for hundreds of miles, surrounding and protecting the entire Wangtian city. The city was filled with rows upon rows of palaces and pavilions. All kinds of houses and buildings of different styles were scattered in all directions. The wide streets and alleys were bustling with activity. Most of them were armed with swords and sabers. Their eyes were bright, and their bodies exuded a fierce or powerful aura. Even the peddlers and pawns peddling their wares on the streets were all powerful. None of them were ordinary people. Even though they were still far away, they could already hear the clamor and clamor. Ji Tianxing came to the east gate and followed the bustling crowd into sky-gazing city. There were close to 100 guards on both sides of the city gate. They were all dressed in black cold iron armor and held long spears that flickered with cold light. Their auras were cold and austere. However, the guards did not check the people who entered and left the city. It was probably because of the divine martial sacred assembly that the number of martial artists entering and leaving Sky City had increased by several times in the past few days. Although only a few people were qualified to participate in the divine martial sacred assembly. Those people would bring a large group of disciples, followers, and guards with them. Very few people came alone like Ji Tianxing. Moreover, there were countless martial artists who came to Sky City just to watch the show. It was also good to be able to appreciate the elegance of the young martial saints. After entering Sky City, Ji Tianxing walked calmly to the center of the city and looked around calmly. At this moment, a series of shouts came from behind him. "Look, it's the honor guard of Marshal Saint Qingshan. Everyone get out of the way. Marshal Saint Qingshan has arrived. Don't block the way. Everyone, get to the side of the road. If you offend Marshal Saint Qingshan, be careful of your heads." As the noisy shouts sounded, the martial artists and people beside Ji Tianxing all retreated to the sides of the road. Ji Tianxing turned his head and saw a guard of honor of more than 100 people passing through the city gate in a majestic manner. They were walking over in a dignified manner. The guards in the guard of honor were all wearing the Jin family's robes and holding halberds. Their eyes were as sharp as lightning. At first glance, one could tell that they were all powerful experts. 18 young guards were leading 6 celestial horses that were as red as fire, pulling a dazzling carriage. Around the carriage, there were more than a dozen young and beautiful maids in green clothes. All of them were holding swords and had a cold temperament. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and thought to himself, "Marshal Saint Qingshan? I've never heard of him before. He should be a young expert who rose in the last few hundred years. There seems to be a record of this person in the jade slip that Granny Long gave me. This person seems to be the Holy Emperor of the Qingshan Empire under the Heaven Extinction Divine Nation. He's the youngest martial saint. No wonder he's so arrogant." At this moment, a white-haired old man walked out from the crowd and said to Ji Tianxing anxiously, "Young man, don't just stand there. Didn't you see the guard of honor of Marshal Saint Qingshan? You're in the middle of the road. If you anger Marshal Saint Qingshan, you'll have to bear the consequences." Ji Tianxing glanced at the white-haired old man. Seeing the anxiety and worry in his eyes, he nodded with a smile and said, "Thank you for the reminder." After saying that, he followed the white-haired old man to the side of the road and stood in the crowd. The people on both sides of the road all kept quiet. They looked at the guard of honor with reverence, not daring to make a noise. After the guard of honor of Marshal Saint Qingshan passed by, the crowd showed a relieved expression. Soon after, the crowd began to discuss. Why did Marshal Saint Qingshan arrive early? Logically speaking, he should be very close to Wangtian City. Maybe there's a reason. How would we know? In the last 200 years, Marshal Saint Qingshan has been in the top 10 for 4 consecutive Shenwu sacred assemblies. In the last sacred assembly, he even ranked 4th. He's really famous. I hope that in this Shenwu sacred assembly, Marshal Saint Qingshan can enter the top 3. The Honorable 4th Divine Son has been ranked 1st for 10 consecutive sacred assemblies. If Marshal Saint Qingshan can also enter the top 3, then our Tianjua Divine Nation can occupy 2 of the top 3 positions, completely suppressing the Taihao and Luoshui Divine Nations. Haha, if that's the case, the other 2 Divine Nations will lose face. I'm really looking forward to it. Ji Tianxing stood in the crowd, silently listening to the crowd's discussion. his expression did not change. Not long after, the warriors and the people on both sides of the road dispersed. Ji Tianxing also turned and left, continuing to rush to the center of the city. He had calculated the time. The Shenwu Sacred Assembly would be held the day after tomorrow. He arrived at Wangtian City 2 days in advance. He had to find a place to stay in the city and wait patiently. 2 hours later, he walked to the center of the city. Not far from the city square, he found an inn to stay in. This inn, called Donglai, occupied the entire palace. The decoration was very magnificent. Chapter 2150. Not only was the East Inn luxurious, but its defense was also very tight. There were a large number of guards outside the inn and many defensive arrays were set up inside the inn. Even the bedrooms were separated by a formation that could isolate sound and divine sense from probing. Although the price of staying in the inn was very expensive, there were still many martial arts experts who stayed in the inn. After all, the experts who came from all over the world did not care about spiritual stones. They needed a quiet environment. Ji Tianxing stayed on the 5th floor of the inn, in a simple and elegant bedroom. This bedroom not only had a bedroom, living room, and study room, but also a secret room for cultivation. Ji Tianxing was satisfied with this. After staying in the room, he entered the secret room and closed his eyes to meditate. After traveling for half a month, he was indeed tired. Just before the Divine Martial Sage Assembly, he could rest in the inn for 2 days and recover to his peak state as soon as possible so that he could face the upcoming challenge. However, after meditating for 2 hours, Ji Tianxing frowned. He always felt as if there was a pair of eyes hiding in the dark, staring at him. Whenever he vaguely felt a sense of vigilance. After reaching the martial sage realm, his perception had become stronger and sharper. Even if someone cursed him from 100 miles away, he could still sense it. Strange, this is the first time I came to Wangtian City. There are no enemies here and I am not ostentatious. Who would be spying on me? This thought flashed through Ji Tianxing's mind. Puzzled, he quietly released his divine senses and extended them in all directions. Although there were many arrays in the inn, they could not block his divine senses. Soon, his divine senses covered the entire palace and he detected hundreds of different auras. The various scenes in the inn appeared clearly in his mind. In the hall on the 1st floor, the shopkeeper stood behind the tall counter, fiddling with the abacus and looking at the account book. More than 10 guards guarded the door. There were also 2 groups of travel-worn martial artists who were asking the waiter if there was a room. In the hundreds of rooms on the 2nd to 5th floor, there were martial artists from all over the world. Most of them were from the human tribe, but there were a few from the foreign tribe. Most of the people were in groups of 3 or 5, but there were also a few who were alone like him. However, 2 groups of people caught Ji Tianxing's attention. A group of people was staying in the A-ranked VIP room on the 3rd floor. It was a young man with a graceful bearing. He was dressed luxuriously and had a dignified appearance. Inside and outside the room, there were 8 maids and more than 30 guards and attendants. All of them were extremely respectful. Most importantly, the young man's aura had reached the martial sage realm. The other group of people lived on the 4th floor. They lived in ordinary rooms with only 6 people. The leader was a tall and sturdy man. He wore a purple robe and a dark golden cape. His entire body exuded a dignified and domineering aura. This person was also a martial sage and his body contained the aura of wind and thunder. The 5 people who traveled with him all had the strength of the tribulation realm, and they all wore the same white robes. They looked like fellow disciples. A tiny East arrival inn actually has 2 martial saints. It seems that the influence of the Divine Martial Sage Assembly should not be underestimated. It actually attracted all the martial sage experts of the continent here. Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and muttered to himself. Then, he quietly moved his spiritual consciousness away and continued to explore the inn. After a while, he found a clue and found his target. At the entrance of the inn, there were 12 guards in armor and holding swords. They stood upright and guarded the door. 11 of the guards looked straight ahead and had a cold and dignified posture. Only a skinny guard stared at the entrance from time to time, and then looked at the stairs in the hall. Although he tried to hide it, he acted naturally when he looked around and did not attract attention. However, his subtle movements and expressions could not escape Ji Tianxing's eyes. Other than the guards at the entrance, there were also 2 young men in cotton clothes at the back door. They were using a wooden cart to pull a few buckets and had been staying at the back door. On the surface, they looked like the workers of the inn who were working. But in reality, they had been staring at the back door, carefully observing everyone who came in and out. These 3 people were all sneaky and seemed very suspicious. However, Ji Tianxing did not take it to heart. What really made him vigilant was a black-robed man who lived on the 5th floor. This person was wearing a cloak and hid his true face, hiding in the room at the end of the corridor. He was wearing some kind of magic treasure that could hide and conceal his magic power aura. However, he was secretly using a diamond-shaped crystal to monitor the movements of the entire floor. Ji Tianxing observed for a while and found that this person's attention was mostly focused on his room. Moreover, this person was secretly releasing his spiritual consciousness to check the situation in his room. If he really is coming for me. Although this guy used a secret technique to hide his spiritual consciousness, he is too naive. Did he think he could hide it from me? Ji Tianxing frowned slightly, a cold light flashed in his eyes. In the Tianju divine nation, other than martial god Tianju, there are only people from the Broken Sky Alliance who have a grudge with me. I wonder which faction these people belong to? Actually, he vaguely had an answer in his heart. Martial god Tianju wanted the mystery of the Pillar of Heaven's mountain's ascension, so he would naturally secretly deal with him. However, if martial god Tianju wanted to make a move, why would he send these shrimp soldiers and crab generals? His vision was too low. Therefore, the answer was obvious. Ji Tianxing ignored the people who were secretly monitoring him and continued to meditate in the secret room. However, his spiritual consciousness seemed to extend out faintly, keeping an eye on the movements of those people. For hours later, it was late at night. The bustling sky city gradually quieted down. East arrival in also fell into silence, only the lights in each room were lit. At this moment, the black-robed man who lived at the end of the corridor on the 5th floor quietly left his room. As soon as he left the inn, the guard at the entrance of the hall and the 2 linen-clothed men at the back door also scattered and left. Ji Tianxing also ended his meditation, used the invisibility technique, and quietly flew out of the inn. He followed the black-robed man, passed through the dark night sky, and flew out of Sky City. The black-robed man was very cautious. He circled the city twice before leaving from the corner of the city wall. After leaving Wangtian City, he sped up and flew towards the west. After a short 15 minutes, he flew out 800 miles and arrived at a mountain peak that was thousands of feet tall. This mountain peak was very ordinary among the mountains and was not eye-catching. However, on the peak of the mountain, under the cover of many towering trees, there was an ancient and quiet manor. The black-robed man descended from the sky and landed outside the manor. He cautiously checked the surroundings, and seeing that no one was following him, he quietly entered the manor. The manor was pitch black and deathly silent. It looked as if no one lived here and had been abandoned for a long time. Chapter 2151. Ji Tianxing had used the Armillary Heaven secret technique and had already merged with heaven and earth. He quietly landed at the entrance of the manor and glanced at the plaque on the door. The plaque made of bluestone had long been modeled, and the words on it were also blurred. But Ji Tianxing could still recognize that it was the 3 words, Chieftain Garden. Even though there was a large defensive formation that enveloped the entire manor. But he easily broke through the formation and entered Chieftain Garden. He knew the whereabouts of the black-robed man like the back of his hand. He passed through the garden and corridor without any obstruction, entered a green bamboo sea, and also entered the rockery. At the same time, in the depths of the manor, in a dimly lit secret room, the black-robed man respectfully knelt on the ground and was kowtowing. 10 steps in front of him, there was a throne made of green spirit jade, and a man in a purple robe sat on it. This person was tall and muscular, with a black cloak on his shoulders and a silver mask on his face. It was unknown what material the mask was made of, but it actually shone brightly in the darkness, as if there were stars flashing. The mask covered the black-robed man's face, only revealing a pair of long and sharp eyes. His black pupils were very deep, revealing calmness and wisdom. The masked man sat on the throne with his hands flat on his knees, meditating. Seeing that the black-robed man had returned, he revealed a cold gaze and asked in a low and dignified voice, "Fu Yu, how is the situation?" The black-robed man named Fu Yu hurriedly cupped his fists and bowed, and said respectfully, "Reporting to Lord Bai Xiao, since 6 days ago, I have sent people to guard the 4 city gates. Anyone who enters Sky-Gazing City cannot escape the eyes of this subordinate. Just this afternoon, that person finally came and entered Sky City from the East Gate." The masked man was Lord Bai Xiao. Hearing Fu Yu's words, his eyes flashed with a bright light, and he asked excitedly, "Oh, he finally came? Pa, I already expected that brat has always been arrogant and will not remember the previous grudges. The Divine Martial Sacred Assembly is such a big event, he will definitely come. Fu Yu, where is that person now? Did he bring any companions? Have you met anyone after entering Wangtian City?" Fu Yu answered truthfully, "That person did not bring any companions. He entered Sky-Gazing City alone and has never met with anyone else. He is now staying at the East Arrival Inn." Bai Xiao nodded slightly as a cold smile flashed through his eyes. He said coldly, "That's good. It's not convenient for us to find him for revenge, but he has delivered himself to our doorstep. This time, we'll make sure he doesn't return." Fu Yu also revealed a triumphant sneer as she added, "Although it's rumored that this brat broke through to the martial saint realm not long ago, he's still a martial saint." However, with Lord White Firmament personally taking action, it was naturally an easy task. This subordinate knows that Lord White Firmament and Lord Heavenly Slayer are both patrol envoys of our alliance. They are also fellow disciples of the same sect and have always had a deep relationship. Very soon, Lord Bai Xiao will be able to kill that kid and avenge Lord Tianshang. He will also be able to comfort Lord Tianshang's soul in heaven. Hearing Fu Yu's words, Bai Xiao shook his head. A cold light flickered in his eyes as he said faintly, "No, Fu Yu, you are wrong. Heavenly Slayer and I are indeed from the same sect, but we don't have much of a deep friendship. The reason why I volunteered to carry out this mission is to complete the Alliance leader's instructions. After all, our alliance is the #1 martial alliance in the mainland and we are deeply respected by millions of sects. He's just a brat and he dares to go against our alliance. He even killed our branch leader and patrol envoys. If we don't get rid of this brat, what prestige will our alliance have in the future?" Fu Yu hurriedly cupped her fists and bowed. She said respectfully, "Lord White Firmament is right." Bai Xiao chuckled and continued, "Furthermore, our alliance spent half a year investigating that brat's background. It said that he is the #1 god's disciple in the Luoshui Holy Kingdom. He also calls himself the #1 genius of the human race and has created many legends. Previously, before he broke through to the martial saint realm, he was able to kill patrol envoys Tianshang. However, we don't know how he did it. However, his strength is definitely not ordinary and his methods are extraordinary. Now that he has broken through to the martial saint realm, he is like a tiger that has grown wings. His strength must be even more powerful. Our alliance has always acted swiftly and decisively. We will definitely not do anything that we are not confident in. Although I am conceited, I do not dare to be careless in this matter. Naturally, I will do my best." Hearing his words, Fu Yu was stunned. Her face was filled with doubt as she asked, "Lord White Firmament, what do you mean?" Bai Xiao smiled confidently and said calmly, "I have already mobilized 50 of our alliance's top powers to lie in ambush around Strange Maple Garden. They will be on standby at any time. Furthermore, our alliance leader has already come out of seclusion and decided to use this matter to establish our prestige in case the other martial forces look down on our alliance. Now, our alliance leader is on his way and I believe that he will arrive soon. When that time comes, no matter how powerful that brat is, he will definitely die. Fu Yu was shocked and said in disbelief, Lord White Firmament, that brat is very young and has just broken through to the martial saint realm. Is it worth our alliance mobilizing so many people? I think that Lord White Firmament and the 50 top powers will be enough to tear that brat into pieces. I didn't expect that even our alliance leader would be alerted and rush over personally. Bai Xiao nodded and said meaningfully, Fu Yu, you are only a small branch leader. How can you guess what our alliance leader is thinking? So what if we mobilize so many people and make a mountain out of a molehill? The alliance leader has been in seclusion for more than 200 years and has not shown himself. It is inevitable that the newly risen martial forces in the mainland will overstep their boundaries. The alliance leader wants to use this matter to establish his prestige and intimidate those forces who have ulterior motives. So that's how it is, subordinate understands. Fu Yu came to a sudden realization and hurriedly bowed. Bai Xiao waved his hand and instructed, All right, return to the inn and keep an eye on him. If there are any abnormalities, report to me immediately. Fu Yu quickly cupped her fists and bowed. Her voice was sonorous as she said, I will do as you command. I will take my leave. With that, she turned and opened the door to the secret chamber and was about to leave. However, just as she opened the stone door, her body froze on the spot. Her face under the cloak was filled with shock and astonishment as her eyes widened. This was because a young man in a white robe was standing at the door of the secret chamber and was looking at her with a cold smile on his face. I'm right here. Why do you need to spy on me in the inn? Without a doubt, the person who had come was Ji Tianxing. Not only was Fu Yu staring at him in shock, but even Bai Zhao's body shook and his eyes were filled with shock. In the next moment, Fu Yu regained his senses and a murderous look appeared on his face. She shouted angrily, Brat, you actually followed me here. Chapter 2152. As he spoke, Fu Yu raised both his fists and punched towards Ji Tianxing's head. His fists emitted a dazzling golden light and emitted a violent and fierce aura. Even a huge rock or a city wall would be shattered instantly, let alone a body of flesh and blood. However, Ji Tianxing did not take Fu Yu seriously at all. A mocking sneer still hung on his face. He raised his right hand and casually slammed his palm towards Fu Yu. Boom! With a dull explosion, Fu Yu's fists exploded on the spot and a rain of blood splattered out. At the same time, Fu Yu flew backwards with blood spurting out of his 7 orifices and crashed violently towards Bai Xiao. While he was still in midair, Fu Yu's heart and soul had already been shattered. By the time he crashed in front of Bai Xiao, he had already lost all signs of life and turned into a corpse. Bai Xiao was indeed a patrol envoy and a martial saint. He could remain calm in the face of such a drastic change and remained seated on his throne. With a cold look in his eyes, he reached out and caught Fu Yu's corpse and threw it on the ground. His eyes were fixed on Ji Tianxing the entire time and did not shift away at all. Kid, I said that you were arrogant and conceited, but I underestimated you. I never thought that you would be so arrogant that you would sneak into wonderful Maple Garden to die. Bai Xiao glared sharply at Ji Tianxing and shouted in a cold tone. Ji Tianxing calmly stepped into the secret room and said with a cold smile, I heard your conversation clearly. Since someone wants my life, then of course I have to personally come and see who it is that dares to act so recklessly. Bai Xiao was not in a hurry to attack and shouted in a dignified tone, Kid, I really don't know if you're too conceited or too ignorant. You've offended the Broken Heaven Alliance, the #1 martial Dao faction in the continent. Apart from the 3 divine kingdoms, no one and no faction can fight against our alliance. You're the one who's tired of living if you're in such a hurry to die. Ji Tianxing glanced at him pitifully and laughed coldly, only a frog at the bottom of a well like you would praise the Broken Heaven Alliance to the heavens. In my eyes, the heaven-shattering alliance is nothing but a motley crew. What is there to fear? You! Bai Xiao was so angry that his body trembled, and his eyes were covered with a layer of red. In his rage, his qi and blood almost flowed in the opposite direction, and he could not help but go berserk. He never thought that Ji Tianxing would actually be arrogant to such an extent that he did not even put the heaven-shattering alliance in his eyes. Ji Tianxing wasn't in a hurry to make a move. He said in a playful tone, "You're stalling for time with me because you want to wait for those 50 tribulation transcending experts to arrive. This can only mean that your heart is filled with fear. You and I haven't even fought yet, and you've already lost." Bai Xiao immediately frowned, his eyes flashing with shame and indignation. But what Ji Tianxing said was the truth, so he couldn't refute it. Ji Tianxing continued, "I've always hated trouble, so tonight, I plan to make a clean break with the heaven-breaking alliance. Aren't you delusional? Are you still hoping that those 50 experts will come and join forces with you to attack me? Since that's the case, then I'll wait for them to come, and then I'll destroy your delusions in front of you." Bai Zhao's eyes suddenly widened, revealing a look of shock. "You bastard, you're really arrogant to the point of being lawless. You've underestimated those 50 elite experts. Even I wouldn't dare to be so careless. Kid, you're dead meat. I'll tear you to pieces." Ji Tianxing only sneered disdainfully and did not reply. Soon, in the night sky outside Chifen Garden, there was a slight sound of something breaking through the air. Dozens of black shadows cut through the night sky and entered the manor as fast as lightning. In the blink of an eye, those black shadows landed around the sea of bamboos, forming a circle. A total of 50 experts were wearing black outfits and cloaks, concealing their true appearances. They all held sabers, swords, and magic treasures in their hands, and their bodies emitted a fierce killing intent. Everyone moved in an orderly manner and did not make any noise. Two of the leaders were about to activate the array in the rockery to enter the secret underground chamber. At this moment, a golden light flashed in the rockery, and a white figure appeared out of thin air. Swoosh! The white-robed figure appeared in the night sky, and his body stood proudly on the rockery. He looked down at the black-robed men around him with an indifferent expression. "You're not slow. You've all arrived so quickly," he said in a calm tone, and a domineering aura spread out. The 50 experts around the sea of bamboos all focused their gazes on him, and they looked stunned. At the same time, a white light lit up in the rockery again. Swoosh! Bai Xiao flew out, and his body stood upright in the night sky, facing off against Ji Tianxing. The black-robed experts saw Bai Xiao appear, and they heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly bowed to greet him. "Greetings, Lord Bai Xiao." Bai Zhao's face was as cold as ice, and he ordered in a cold tone, "What are you waiting for? Kill that brat." The black-robed experts came back to their senses, and they hurriedly waved their swords and dharma treasures, and used their unparalleled killing moves to besiege Ji Tianxing. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Suddenly, the light of swords and sabers lit up, dispelling the darkness in the night sky. Hundreds of spell lights and shadows poured down on Ji Tianxing like a flood from the sky. Ji Tianxing was surrounded and attacked by everyone, but he was not afraid at all. He formed a spell with both hands and shouted in a dignified tone, "Sword rain." In the blink of an eye, he formed 99 dharma seals with both hands, and they condensed into a dazzling starlight that bloomed like a lotus. At the same time, in the distant sky, tens of thousands of cracks appeared in the sky. Tens of thousands of starlights lit up and poured down like a torrential rain. In an instant, tens of thousands of starlight swords lit up the night sky, dispelling the boundless darkness. The area became as bright as day, and it was so bright that people could not open their eyes. Countless martial artists and civilians in Wangtian City were also awakened by the earth-shattering aura of the stars. Of course, before the starlight sword rain fell, the dharma spells cast by many experts hit Ji Tianxing first. Bang, bang, bang. A series of muffled sounds burst out, like muffled thunder, continuous and unending. The colorful brilliance of the dharma spells completely drowned Ji Tianxing. However, he was wrapped in a layer of golden light, and he stood in the night sky like a towering mountain, motionless. No matter how many dharma spells bombarded him, he was not injured at all, and he did not even take half a step back. his flesh and skin were far tougher than a divine artifact, so how could those tribulation stage experts hurt him? Such a scene caused by Xiao and the 50 black-clothed experts to reveal expressions of indescribable terror. They could not believe this result, and they wanted to use their ultimate skills to besiege Ji Tianxing again. But it was too late, and the monstrous sword rain finally fell. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The sharp and ear-piercing sound of something breaking through the air enveloped the entire mountain peak. Tens of thousands of starlight swords, with the power to destroy heaven and earth, drowned the entire Qifeng garden. As the starlight bloomed like a mushroom cloud, a loud noise that shook the 9 heavens immediately sounded. Boom, boom, boom. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.